Before we begin this epic tale of hidden royalty and bloody revenge, let me ask you one thing. Have you ever watched someone so broken, so worthless in the eyes of the world, that their very existence became a joke? Stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happens when that worthless slave removes her cloak will leave you speechless. And if you're watching from anywhere in the world right now, drop your city in the comments below. I want to know where my fellow story lovers are watching from. Don't forget to hit that like button, because this tale deserves to be heard. The auction hall stank of unwashed bodies, stale wine, and desperation. Torches guttered along stone walls slick with condensation, casting writhing shadows across the platform where human beings were sold like livestock. The crowd pressed close. Merchants in oil-stained leather, minor lords in faded velvet, opportunists with hungry eyes and jingling purses. They shouted, laughed, spat on the floor. This was the northern slave market of Grenmore, where the empire's unwanted came to be redistributed like damaged goods. Lot 47! The auctioneer's voice cracked like a whip. Field hand, strong back, can work stone. Opening bid, 3 silver. The bidding erupted immediately. Coins flashed, hands shot up. The muscled man on the platform was purchased within minutes, dragged off by a quarrymaster who looked pleased with his acquisition. The next lot shuffled forward. Then the murmuring started. What in the frozen hell is that? The girl who stumbled onto the platform was barely visible beneath the grime. Soot covered her from head to foot, not the honest dirt of fieldwork, but the black residue of fire and ash. Her hair hung in matted clumps, her feet were bare and bleeding. The thin slave tunic she wore was so filthy it was impossible to tell what color it had once been. But it was her face that made the crowd fall silent, then erupt in mocking laughter. She stared at nothing. Her expression was utterly blank, eyes unfocused, mouth slightly open. She moved like a sleepwalker, guided onto the platform by the auctioneer's rough shove. When he positioned her in the light, she simply stood there, swaying slightly, looking at no one. Behold! The auctioneer's voice dripped with theatrical disgust. A fine specimen of absolutely nothing, found in the ruins of a burned village 3 weeks north. Can't speak, won't speak, might be mute, might be brain damaged, might just be the stupidest creature ever birthed. The crowd roared with laughter. Does she even know where she is? Someone shouted. Check if she's breathing, another voice called out. Looks half dead already. The auctioneer prodded her shoulder with his staff. She didn't react. He waved a hand in front of her face. Nothing. It was like watching someone try to get a response from a statue. As you can see, the auctioneer continued, clearly enjoying himself now, this lot comes with no guarantees of functionality. She might work. She might wander into a wall and stand there until she starves. She might be possessed by demons, for all we know. But the law says we have to sell her, so he spread his hands in mock helplessness. Who wants to take a chance on damaged goods? Dead silence. A few people exchanged glances. Most simply turned away, already scanning the remaining lots for something worth their coin. Come now! The auctioneer's voice took on a wheedling tone. Somebody must need a body for the worst jobs. Cleaning cesspits? Hauling night soil? She can't complain if she can't talk. A merchant in the back spat on the floor. I wouldn't waste feed on that. 1 silver, the auctioneer called desperately. Surely she's worth 1 silver piece. No response. 8 copper then. Come on, gentlemen, 8 copper for a warm body. A woman in a tattered shawl laughed bitterly. I wouldn't pay 8 copper for firewood that useless. The girl stood there through it all, completely motionless, staring at nothing. If she heard the insults, she gave no sign. If she understood where she was, what was happening to her, she showed no indication. She was a shell, an empty vessel in human form. The auctioneer's face darkened. This was taking too long. The crowd was getting restless. 5 copper, he said flatly. Final offer. 5 copper coins, and she's yours. Otherwise, she goes to the rendering house. The rendering house, where unsellable slaves were sent, where bodies were broken down for whatever use could be extracted, organs for physicians, bones for glue, fat for soap. It was spoken of in whispers. A fate worse than death. Still no bidders. The auctioneer raised his hand to signal the guards. The girl would be dragged away, disposed of, forgotten. Just another piece of human refuse that the Empire had chewed up and spat out. 5 copper. The voice came from the back of the hall, deep, cold, utterly disinterested. The crowd parted. Duke Adrian Blackmore walked forward like winter given human form. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that suggested a lifetime of sword work rather than administrative comfort. His hair was dark, shot through with premature silver at the temples. His face was all hard angles and sharp edges, carved from northern granite. But it was his eyes that made people step back instinctively, pale gray, like ice over deep water, and just as merciless. He wore black, always black. A long coat of fine wool over a simple tunic and trousers, practical boots, no jewelry except a signet ring bearing the Blackmore crest, a raven clutching a broken sword. Everything about him spoke of controlled violence, of power held on a very short leash. The crowd recognized him immediately. Whispers rippled outward. Blackmore, the War Duke. What's he doing here? Duke Adrian Blackmore was not a man who attended slave auctions. He had no need. His estate was small by ducal standards, a fortress manor in the frozen north, more military garrison than noble residence. He employed soldiers, not servants. He had no family, no heirs, no interest in the social theatrics that consumed most of the aristocracy. He was here for one reason only. 3 spaces to his left stood Lord Peter Carnish, a minor noble with major ambitions and a face like a weasel. Carnish had been bidding aggressively all evening, snapping up every lot he could afford. 2 days ago, he had made an insulting offer to purchase a section of Blackmore's land. Adrian had refused. Carnish had persisted, making veiled threats about taking the matter to the High Council. So Adrian had come here tonight with a simple goal: deny Carnish every single purchase, outbid him on everything, drive up the prices, make him pay dearly for his presumption. It was petty, vindictive, deeply satisfying. Carnish's face had been growing redder with each lot Adrian stole from him. Now, seeing Adrian bid on the most worthless slave in the entire auction, his expression twisted with confusion and rage. 5 copper? Carnish sputtered. You're bidding on that? Adrian didn't look at him. I believe that's what I said. She's brain damaged. Useless. Then you won't mind if I purchase her? The auctioneer looked between them, clearly trying to figure out what was happening. We have a bid of 5 copper from Duke Blackmore. Do I hear 6? Carnish's face went through several interesting color changes. His hands clenched into fists. For a moment it looked like he might actually bid just out of spite. Then he caught sight of Adrian's expression, that cold, patient look of a predator waiting for an excuse, and deflated. Keep her, Carnish spat. Waste your coin. Sold. The auctioneer brought down his gavel with obvious relief. Lot 47 to Duke Blackmore for 5 copper coins. Lowest sale price in the recorded history of this establishment. Congratulations, Your Grace. The sarcasm in that last word was unmistakable. Adrian walked to the platform and dropped 5 copper coins into the auctioneer's palm. The man looked at them like they were contaminated. She's all yours, my lord. May you get your money's worth. He laughed at his own joke. Adrian turned to look at his purchase for the first time. The girl stood exactly where she'd been positioned, still staring at nothing. Up close, the damage was even more apparent. Her feet were torn and blistered, suggesting she'd walked a long distance without shoes. Her hands were raw, fingernails broken. The soot that covered her was so thick it was impossible to tell her actual age, anywhere from 15 to 20, perhaps. But it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were brown, dark brown, almost black. And while her face remained blank, while her body stayed motionless, those eyes were not empty. They were watching, recording, calculating. It was so brief he might have imagined it. A flicker of awareness, gone in an instant, buried again beneath that mask of broken stupidity. Adrian felt something cold settle in his gut. Professional instinct, honed through years of warfare. This girl was not what she appeared to be. Come, he said simply. She didn't react. He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, he heard the auctioneer mutter something about training the mute one with a stick, and the crowd's laughter followed him out into the night. He stepped into the courtyard where his horse waited. a massive black destrier named Fenrir who could bite a man's arm off and had done so twice. The beast was held by Marcus, Adrian's lieutenant, and one of the few men he trusted. Marcus looked at the doorway, looked at Adrian, raised an eyebrow. "Don't," Adrian said. "I didn't say anything." "You were thinking it very loudly." Marcus was a scarred veteran with a face like a cliffside and a pragmatic approach to life that Adrian valued. He also had no filter whatsoever. "You bought the broken one," Marcus observed, "the one they were going to render." "I'm aware." "For 5 copper." "Correct." "To spite Carnish." "Partially." "And the other part?" Adrian glanced back at the auction hall. The girl had followed him. She stood just inside the doorway, silhouetted against the torchlight, utterly still. "The other part," Adrian said quietly, "is that I'm curious." Marcus followed his gaze. "About what? Whether she can walk and breathe at the same time? About whether she's actually broken or just very good at pretending to be?" That got Marcus's full attention. His hand drifted toward his sword hilt, pure reflex. "You think she's faking?" "I think," Adrian said slowly, "that truly broken people don't survive 3 weeks in burned ruins and make it to a slave auction looking that preserved. No frostbite, no infection in those foot wounds, no signs of starvation. She should be dead. Maybe she's just lucky." "Maybe?" The girl began walking toward them. Not in a straight line, she wandered, stumbling slightly, like someone who didn't quite remember how legs worked. But she ended up with a horse, close enough to touch. Fenrir, who had killed 3 men in battle and bit anyone foolish enough to approach him without permission, lowered his massive head and sniffed the girl's hair. She reached up slowly and touched his muzzle. The warhorse didn't move, didn't snap, didn't rear. Marcus's eyes widened. "What in the frozen—" "Get the wagon," Adrian interrupted. "She can't ride." "We didn't bring a wagon." "Then she walks." The journey north took 4 days. Adrian and Marcus rode. The girl walked behind them, never falling more than 10 paces back, never closing the distance to less than 5. She didn't speak, didn't eat unless food was placed directly in her hands, drank only when water was offered. But she never stopped watching. Adrian noticed things, small things, the way she chose where to step on uneven ground, always the most stable path, always avoiding loose stones that might turn an ankle. The way she angled her body when the wind shifted, minimizing exposure without seeming to think about it. The way her eyes tracked movement in the peripheral darkness. A night bird, a distant fox, with the focus of someone trained to notice threats. "She's military," Marcus said on the second night, keeping his voice low as the girl sat motionless by the fire. "Or was. Look at her posture. Even slumped like that, her spine straight, and those calluses on her hands, not from field work, from weapons." Adrian had noticed. "Sword or bow?" "Both, I'd wager. And look at her feet, torn up now, but the way she walks? That's not a peasant's gait. She's been trained, properly trained." "So what is she doing in a slave auction, pretending to be brain damaged?" "Hiding." "From what?" Marcus shrugged. "Maybe we'll find out when she decides to drop the act." If she drops the act, Adrian thought, maybe she'll keep it up forever. Maybe she'll die before breaking character. Some people were that disciplined. He found that possibility oddly intriguing. On the 4th day, they reached Ravenscar. The Blackmore estate was not beautiful. It was not designed to be. Built on a clifftop overlooking the northern sea, Ravenscar was a fortress first and a residence second. High stone walls, narrow windows, a single fortified gate. The architecture was old, pre-empire, from the days when northern lords were constantly at war with each other. Adrian preferred it that way. No gilded halls, no useless decorations, just stone and strength and the sound of waves crashing against cliffs far below. Marcus rode ahead to inform the staff. Adrian dismounted at the main gate and waited. The girl stopped walking exactly 10 paces behind him, stood perfectly still, stared at nothing. "You're assigned to the kitchens," Adrian said without turning around. "Follow the head cook's instructions. Don't break anything. Don't steal anything. And if you're going to drop this act, do it somewhere I can watch." No response. He hadn't expected one. He walked through the gate, Behind him, so quietly he almost didn't hear it, came the soft sound of footsteps. The girl followed. The head cook was a woman named Marna, who ran the kitchens with the efficiency of a military quartermaster and the temperament of a wounded bear. She took one look at the girl and sighed deeply. Another one? Last time was 8 months ago, Adrian pointed out. Last time you brought back a veteran with one leg who needed work. Useful. This? Marna gestured at the girl. This is a soot-covered ghost who probably can't even peel a potato. Then give her tasks that don't require peeling potatoes. Like what? Drooling decoratively in the corner? Cleaning, carrying, whatever needs doing that doesn't require conversation. Marna circled the girl slowly, eyes narrowed. The girl didn't react, didn't track the movement, just stood there swaying slightly. She eat? When fed directly. She talk? No. She got a name? Adrian realized he hadn't asked, hadn't even thought to ask. What was the point of asking someone who wouldn't answer? No, he said. Marna snorted. Fine, I'll call her Ash. Seems fitting. She snapped her fingers in front of the girl's face. No reaction. Right then, Ash, you're with me. Try not to burn the place down or fall into the soup. She grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her toward the kitchen entrance. The girl followed passively, offering no resistance, showing no emotion. At the doorway, she paused, turned her head slightly. For just a fraction of a second, her eyes met Adrian's, that same flicker, that same calculating awareness. Then it was gone, buried again, and she was dragged into the kitchen and out of sight. Marcus appeared at Adrian's shoulder. You're playing a dangerous game. Am I? You know what happens when you bring unknown elements into a fortified position, variables you can't control. She could be an assassin, a spy, a saboteur. She could be, Adrian agreed, or she could be exactly what she appears, a broken girl, traumatized past recovery. You don't believe that? No, Adrian admitted. I don't, which is why I'm going to watch her very carefully. And if she tries something? Adrian's expression didn't change. Then I'll kill her, same as I'd kill anyone who threatened this household. Marcus nodded, satisfied. They'd been through enough battles together to understand each other perfectly. In the meantime, Adrian continued, spread the word to the staff. The new girl doesn't speak and may be damaged. Watch her, but don't harass her. Report anything unusual directly to me. Define unusual. Anything, Adrian said, that suggests she's not as broken as she pretends. The first week was uneventful. The girl, Ash, as the staff began calling her, worked in the kitchens. She cleaned pots, hauled water, scrubbed floors. She never spoke, never complained, never made mistakes. She also never made eye contact with anyone, never showed emotion, moved through the space like a ghost, there but not there, present but somehow absent. The kitchen staff found it unnerving. She's like a wind-up toy, one of the younger cooks complained. You point her at a task and she does it, but there's nothing behind her eyes. No person there. Maybe there isn't, Marna said, but her tone was uncertain. Maybe whatever burned her village burned out her mind too. But then strange things started happening. Small things. Easy to miss. The way the pots in the storage room got reorganized overnight, not randomly, but according to a system. Largest to smallest, most used to least used. More efficient than before. The way the kitchen knives stayed sharp without anyone remembering to sharpen them. The way the girl always seemed to be in the right place at the right time, moving out of the way half a second before someone carrying hot soup rounded the corner, reaching for a falling spoon before anyone else noticed it was tipping off the counter. Too many coincidences. Adrian heard the reports from Marcus, who'd been gathering information from the staff. The servants think she's lucky, Marcus said, or possibly haunted. What do you think? I think she's got situational awareness better than half my trained soldiers. She tracks everything in that kitchen without appearing to look at anything. That's not luck. That's training. Adrian nodded slowly. Escalate the test. Assign her to the library. Marcus blinked. Your war library? The one with all the strategic maps and campaign histories? Yes. You're giving her access to military intelligence. I'm giving her access to see how she reacts. If she's a spy, she'll be drawn to the information. If she's something else... Adrian paused. We'll find out. The library was on the third floor of Ravenscar's main tower, a circular room lined with books, scrolls, and maps. It was Adrian's private domain where he studied warfare the way other nobles studied wine or art. Marna delivered the assignment personally, though she clearly thought it was strange. His Grace wants the library cleaned, she told the girl. Dusting, organizing, that sort of thing. Don't touch the books themselves unless you're moving them to clean the shelves. Understood? The girl stared at nothing. Right, Marna muttered. Just try not to burn anything. She left the girl standing in the doorway and departed. The girl didn't move for a long moment. Then slowly, she walked into the library. Adrian watched from a concealed alcove off the main room, a small space designed for exactly this purpose. From here, he could observe without being seen. The girl began with the windows, cleaning them methodically, working from top to bottom, left to right. No wasted movement, professional. Then she started on the bookshelves. This was where it got interesting. She pulled books out to dust behind them. Reasonable, but instead of replacing them randomly, she began sorting them, setting aside books that didn't match the subject of their shelf, grouping similar topics together. Still normal, still explainable. Then she reached the maps. Adrian's collection was extensive. Battle maps from every major conflict of the last 100 years, territory maps showing borders and resources, tactical diagrams illustrating famous strategies. They were his obsession, his way of understanding the patterns of warfare. They were also deliberately corrupted with errors. Adrian had introduced subtle mistakes into several maps, wrong river locations, shifted mountain ranges, inverted troop positions, security precautions in case the room was ever breached by enemies. Anyone relying on those maps would make fatal errors. The girl unrolled a map of the southern campaigns from 20 years ago. She looked at it, really looked at it. Then, moving with sudden certainty, she crossed to a desk, found a piece of charcoal, and made a mark on the map. Adrian's breath caught. She'd marked the river he'd deliberately drawn running east-west when it actually ran north-south. She'd corrected his intentional error, and she was still working, map after map. She found every error, corrected every mistake. Her hand moved with absolute confidence, no hesitation, the precision of someone who knew these territories, who understood the geography, who had studied these same campaigns. This was not a broken servant girl. This was someone with military education, extensive military education. But who? Adrian filed that question away and continued watching. The girl finished with the maps and moved to the books. Here, her interest seemed to wane. She dusted mechanically, arranged them neatly, showed no particular attention to the contents, until she reached the restricted section. These were the dangerous books, treatises on assassination, poison, guerrilla warfare, texts that the Empire officially banned, but that Adrian kept for educational purposes. They were locked behind a grated cabinet. The girl stopped in front of it, stood perfectly still. Then she turned away and went back to dusting. Good, Adrian thought. She knows where the line is. She's disciplined enough not to cross it. That made her more dangerous, not less. The cleaning took 3 hours. When it was finished, the library looked better than it had in months. Every surface gleamed, every book was perfectly arranged, and every map bore small charcoal marks showing the corrections she'd made. The girl stood in the center of the room, swaying slightly, back to looking like an empty shell. Adrian stepped out of the alcove. She didn't react to his presence, didn't acknowledge him at all. He walked to the map table and looked down at her corrections. All accurate. Every single one. Interesting, he said aloud. No response from the girl. He turned to face her directly. You've had military training, extensive training, the kind that takes years to acquire, the kind that's only available to nobility or career soldiers. She stared past him at the wall. You're not broken, Adrian continued. You're hiding. The question is, from what? From whom? And why did you allow yourself to be sold in a slave auction when you could clearly have escaped or fought back? Still nothing. Not even a flicker in those dark eyes. Adrian felt a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. It was rare for him to encounter someone this disciplined, this committed to a role. Fine, he said. Keep your secrets. For now. But understand this. I will discover the truth. And when I do, you'll have a choice to make. Trust me with it, or leave this place. I don't keep weapons I don't understand. He walked to the door, then paused. Tomorrow, you'll return here. I'll leave more maps. Let's see what else you know. He left the girl standing alone in the library, surrounded by evidence of her knowledge. That night, Adrian sat in his private study reviewing what he'd learned. Military training, extensive geographical knowledge, the ability to read and write, rare among common folk, almost unheard of among slaves, physical conditioning that suggested years of disciplined exercise, and that complete, unshakable commitment to her cover. Who was she? A spy for a rival lord? Possible, but unlikely. If she'd been sent to infiltrate his household, why allow herself to be sold in the most degrading way possible? Why not arrange a more dignified introduction? A runaway soldier? More plausible, but soldiers usually lacked the refined education she'd demonstrated. They could read maps, yes, but not with that level of expertise. A noblewoman fleeing some political intrigue? Now that was interesting. It would explain the education, the training, the discipline, but it raised more questions. What kind of noblewoman knew military strategy? What kind of scandal would drive someone to such desperate hiding? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. Marcus entered, expression grim. "Problem," he said. Adrian set aside his notes. "Speak." "I was rotating the perimeter guard schedules tonight. Found something odd in the duty logs from 3 days ago." "Define odd." "Guard named Willem reported seeing someone in the inner courtyard at midnight. Said it looked like a servant, moving through the shadows. He challenged them, but got no response. When he went to investigate, they were gone." Adrian's attention sharpened. "Did he identify them?" "No, but I just cross-referenced with the kitchen schedules. Guess who was the only staff member unaccounted for at that hour?" "The girl." Marcus nodded. "Ash. According to Marna, she sleeps in the servants' quarters with the other kitchen staff. But that night, her cot was empty." "Where was she?" "That's the question, isn't it? Willem said the figure was heading toward the east wall. That's the armory access," Adrian finished, "and the path to the wall walk that overlooks the main road." They looked at each other. "She was scouting," Marcus said flatly, "learning the layout, looking for vulnerabilities or escape routes." "Or watching for someone," Adrian added. "The road is visible from that section of wall. If she's waiting for Confederates, that's where she'd watch for them." "You want me to confront her?" Adrian considered. "No. If we confront her, she'll either run or go deeper into her act. Instead," he pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. "Tomorrow, make sure she sees this. Don't give it to her directly. Leave it somewhere she'll encounter it while cleaning." Marcus read over his shoulder. His eyebrows rose. "You're setting a trap." "I'm offering information," Adrian corrected. "Let's see if she takes it." The next morning, the girl was assigned to clean Adrian's study. It was unusual. Servants didn't normally enter the Duke's private workspace, but Marna delivered the order with a shrug. "His Grace requested you specifically. Don't ask me why. Just dust and don't touch anything important." The girl followed Marna to the study door, then entered alone. The room was austere. A desk, several chairs, bookshelves filled with military histories and philosophical texts. A large window overlooking the sea. Everything neat, organized, military precise. And on the desk, left apparently carelessly, a sheet of paper covered in fresh ink. The girl began dusting the bookshelves. Methodical. Thorough. Moving closer to the desk with each passing minute. From behind a two-way mirror mounted in a painting on the wall, Adrian watched. She was taking her time, being careful, not rushing toward the obvious bait. Professional. Finally, after 15 minutes of establishing her cleaning routine, she reached the desk. She glanced at the paper, looked away, continued dusting. Then, in a movement so subtle it might have been accidental, her hand brushed the edge of the paper. It slid slightly, rotating just enough to make the text clearly visible. She froze. Adrian leaned closer to the mirror, watching her face intently. The paper contained a detailed schedule, patrol rotations for the next week, guard positions, shift changes, blind spots in the perimeter coverage. It was exactly what a spy would need to plan an attack or an escape. It was also completely fake. The girl stared at the paper for exactly 5 seconds. Her eyes moved rapidly, scanning the information, memorizing it. Then she turned away and went back to dusting. She didn't take the paper, didn't copy it, didn't even move it back to its original position. Smart, Adrian thought. Taking it would be too obvious. Moving it back would show she'd looked at it. Better to leave it slightly displaced, as if she'd accidentally bumped it while cleaning. But she'd read it. He'd seen the recognition in her eyes, the brief moment when the mask had slipped and intelligence showed through. Now he knew for certain. She was gathering information. The question was, for what purpose? The girl finished cleaning and left the study without looking back. Adrian remained behind the mirror for a long moment, thinking. Then he smiled. "Let's raise the stakes," he murmured to himself. That night, he gave Marcus new orders. "Stage an argument tomorrow, loud, in the courtyard during the midday meal. Make it sound like we're disagreeing about defensive strategy. Mention weak points in the walls, sound angry, make it convincing." Marcus frowned. "You're feeding her false intelligence? I'm seeing if she'll act on it. If she tries to pass information to Confederates, we'll know. And if she doesn't, then we'll learn that too." The next day, as planned, Adrian and Marcus staged their performance. "The north wall is a liability," Marcus's voice carried across the courtyard where half the household staff were eating lunch. "3 breaches in the stone, mortars crumbling, and you're telling me we don't have budget for repairs?" Adrian kept his voice cold, controlled. "We repair what's critical. The north wall overlooks a 100-foot cliff. No one's attacking from that direction." "Unless they come by sea." "Then they'd have to climb vertical stone in full view of our archers. It's not happening." The argument continued, loud and bitter, both of them selling it perfectly. From the corner of his eye, Adrian saw the girl. She was carrying a bucket of kitchen waste to the midden heap, moving slowly, mechanically, apparently oblivious to the shouting. But she'd stopped walking, just for a second, just long enough to listen. Then she continued on, dumping the waste, returning to the kitchens. That night, Willem reported movement on the east wall again. Same figure, same pattern. "She's confirming what she heard," Marcus said, "checking if the north wall really is weak." "And?" "She spent 20 minutes studying it. Then she left. No attempt to signal anyone, no messages dropped, nothing." Adrian nodded slowly. "She's still gathering information, not acting on it yet, which means either her Confederates haven't arrived or she's waiting for something specific. Or," Marcus suggested darkly, "she's alone and planning something we haven't anticipated." "Possible. Keep watching. And Marcus, make sure the actual defenses remain solid. Don't get so caught up in the game that we create real vulnerabilities." "Never." 2 weeks passed. The girl, Ash, settled into the household routine. She worked. She cleaned. She never spoke, never showed emotion, never broke character. But Adrian kept finding evidence of her intelligence. Books reshelved according to a better system than he'd used before. Maps corrected not just for errors, but improved with additional tactical notations. And strangest of all, the garden. The Blackmore estate had a small walled garden, mostly neglected. Nobody paid much attention to it. But one morning, Adrian noticed the herbs had been reorganized. Not randomly, strategically. Medicinal plants grouped together. Poisonous plants separated and marked with small stones. Everything arranged according to use. Healing, seasoning, defense. The kind of organization a military herbalist would create. "She's done this before," Adrian said, standing in the garden with Marcus. "Managed medical supplies for a unit, maybe a siege. Someone taught her how to run a field hospital. Or how to poison an enemy's food supply," Marcus countered, eyeing the carefully sorted toxic plants. "Also possible." They were interrupted by Marna, who came running from the kitchen with an expression of shock. "Your Grace, you need to see this, now!" They followed her to the kitchen storehouse. Inside, complete chaos. Sacks of grain had been torn open, contents spilled everywhere. Storage jars lay shattered. Vegetables were scattered across the floor. It looked like a wild animal had rampaged through the space. "What happened?" Adrian demanded. "That's the thing," Marna said. "Nothing happened. This was fine when I locked it last night, but this morning, this. And look." She pointed to the lock. "Still locked. No signs of forced entry." Marcus knelt by the spilled grain, examining it closely. Someone opened these from inside. With a knife. Clean cuts, not tears. But who would... A sound cut through the morning air, singing, soft, almost inaudible, coming from the courtyard. They hurried outside. The girl stood near the well, a bucket in her hands. She was humming, no, singing, very quietly, almost under her breath, but unmistakably singing. It was a lullaby, old, haunting, and every person over 40 in that courtyard had gone absolutely still. "That song," Marna whispered. "I haven't heard that song in years." "What is it?" Adrian asked. "A royal lullaby, from before the Empire. My grandmother used to sing it, said it was what the palace nursemaids sang to the royal children. But after the coup, after the Vane family was..." She trailed off, looking disturbed. "Nobody sings that anymore. It's not forbidden exactly, but people don't. It reminds everyone of what was lost. The Vane family, the old royal line, overthrown 10 years ago in a bloody coup. The entire family supposedly killed, king, queen, all the children." Adrian's blood went cold. The girl had stopped singing. She stood perfectly still, bucket dangling from her hand, face blank as always. But now Adrian was seeing her differently. The military training, the education, the discipline, the careful hiding. "Get me the historical records," he told Marcus quietly. "Everything we have on the Vane family." "You think..." "I don't think anything yet, but I want answers. Now." 2 hours later, Adrian sat in his study surrounded by scrolls and books. The official history was simple. 10 years ago, King Aldrich Vane had been overthrown by his cousin, Lord Casimir, who'd allied with the military and several powerful dukes. The coup had been swift and brutal. The king was executed. The queen died in the fighting. The 3 royal children, 2 sons and a daughter, were reportedly killed as well, their bodies burned to prevent anyone using them as rallying points for rebellion. Casimir crowned himself king, established the new imperial system, and ruled to this day. Case closed. Except, Adrian found a footnote in one of the older texts, a mention of uncertainty about one of the children, the princess, Alara Vane, age 7 at the time of the coup. Her body was never positively identified. The official story claimed she died in a fire during the palace assault, but several sources noted the rumors that the body found in the nursery was too badly burned to confirm, that servants reported seeing a child fleeing the palace during the chaos, that search parties found no trace despite weeks of hunting. Most historians dismissed it as wishful thinking, the same kind of rumors that always followed royal massacres. People wanted to believe someone survived. But realistically, a 7-year-old girl alone, hunted by soldiers, in the middle of winter? She would have died within days, unless someone helped her, unless she was smarter than anyone expected, unless she'd been trained to survive. Adrian set down the scroll, his mind racing. If the girl in his household was Alara Vane, then everything made sense. The military training? Royal children were educated in warfare. It was tradition. The discipline? She'd spent 10 years hiding, playing a role so completely that even torture wouldn't break her. The knowledge? She'd grown up in the palace, educated by the finest tutors in the kingdom. And the desperation? The willingness to be sold as a slave, degraded and mocked, rather than reveal herself? She knew that if anyone discovered who she was, she'd be executed immediately. King Casimir had built his entire legitimacy on the claim that the Vane line was extinct. The discovery of a living heir would shatter that. Start rebellions. Destabilize the empire. So she hid, probably for 10 years, moving from place to place, never staying long, always playing the damaged servant, the broken girl, the harmless nobody, until she'd been caught in whatever disaster destroyed her last hiding place. Forced into the slave market, sold for 5 copper to a northern duke who had no idea what he'd purchased. Adrian leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. He'd bought the rightful queen of the empire for the price of a loaf of bread. The question was, what did he do about it? Adrian didn't sleep that night. He sat at his desk watching the courtyard through the window, a glass of wine untouched at his elbow. The moon hung low over the sea, painting everything in silver and shadow. Somewhere below, in the servants' quarters, a girl who might be a dead princess slept among kitchen staff who had no idea what walked among them. If she was Alara Vane, and every instinct he'd honed through 2 decades of warfare screamed that she was, then she was the most dangerous person in the entire empire. Not because she was a threat to him personally, but because she was a threat to everything. The current king, the political order, the fragile peace that had held for 10 years. And Adrian had to decide what to do about it. He could expose her, turn her over to the authorities, collect the massive reward that would certainly be offered for the last Vane heir, secure his own political position for life. He could kill her quietly. A tragic accident. The mute servant girl who fell from the cliffs during a storm. No one would question it. Problem solved, secrets buried. Or he could do something monumentally stupid. He could help her. The question was why? What did he owe some fugitive princess? What did he gain by protecting someone the Empire wanted dead? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Unless... Adrian's eyes drifted to the locked drawer at the bottom of his desk. Inside lay documents he'd spent 5 years collecting. Evidence, testimonies, financial records showing the bribes that had funded the coup, letters proving that King Casimir had planned the massacre months in advance, proof that the current regime was built on blood and lies. Adrian had compiled this evidence for one reason. He hated Casimir. Not personally, they'd never met. But Adrian had fought in the border wars, had seen what happened when corrupt leadership met military incompetence. Casimir's reign had been marked by brutal taxation, pointless conflicts, and the systematic suppression of anyone who questioned his authority. Adrian had watched good soldiers die for bad orders, had seen northern villages starve to fund the king's palace renovations, had been forced to execute deserters who were only fleeing because their families were being tortured for unpaid taxes. He'd gathered the evidence planning to... what? Start a rebellion himself? He had the military skill but not the legitimacy. No one would follow a duke with no claim to the throne. But a Vane heir, the rightful queen, people would die for that. The problem was proving she was who he suspected. And then, somehow, keeping her alive long enough to matter. Adrian made his decision. He would test her, push her, see if she would break character, and if she did, if she revealed herself, then he would offer her a choice: die as a servant or fight for a crown. The next morning he called Marcus to his study. "I'm assigning the girl new duties," Adrian said without preamble. "Starting today, she works in the war library, full-time." Marcus's expression went carefully neutral. "That's unprecedented. I want her cataloging the military histories, organizing the campaign records, cross-referencing the tactical manuscripts." "You're giving her complete access to your entire strategic archive." "Yes." "May I ask why?" Adrian met his lieutenant's eyes. "Because I want to see what she does with it, and because if she is what I think she is, we need to know sooner rather than later." Marcus absorbed this. He'd known Adrian long enough to read between the lines. "You think she's highborn, someone important. I think she's either the most elaborately planted spy in history, or she's someone with very good reasons to stay hidden. Either way, I need the truth. And if she's dangerous, then we deal with it. But Marcus, if she reveals herself, if she drops the act, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "You'll hear me out before you act. No matter what she says, no matter who she claims to be, you'll give me a chance to explain before you do something we can't undo." Marcus studied him for a long moment. "You're planning something." "I'm planning several things. Most of them probably stupid. But I need your word." "You have it. Always have." Adrian nodded. "Good. Now go tell Marna the girl's been reassigned, and make sure the library door stays unlocked. I want to see if she explores when she thinks no one's watching." The girl received her new assignment with the same blank acceptance she showed everything. Marna delivered the news. "You're to report to the war library each morning. His Grace wants the books organized. Can you handle that without burning the place down?" No response. Just that empty stare. Marna sighed. "Right. Well, off you go then. 3rd floor, West Tower. Try to look like you know what you're doing." The girl climbed the stairs slowly, one hand trailing along the stone wall. To any observer, she looked like someone who could barely navigate stairs without guidance. But Adrian, watching from a shadowed alcove on the 2nd floor landing, saw the truth. Her footsteps were perfectly measured. Equal weight, equal spacing. The kind of controlled movement that came from years of training to move silently. Her hand on the wall wasn't for support. It was tactical awareness, maintaining contact with a solid surface to orient herself in the space. And her eyes, though apparently unfocused, tracked every doorway, every window, every potential exit. This girl had been trained to survive in hostile territory. She reached the library door and paused. For just a moment, her posture changed, straightened, like a soldier coming to attention. Then she slouched again, pushed open the door, and shuffled inside. Adrian waited 5 minutes, then followed. The library looked different than he remembered. In just 1 week of the girl's previous cleaning session, she'd transformed it from organized chaos into something resembling a military archive. Books arranged by subject and chronology, maps sorted by region and date, reference materials grouped by type. Everything labeled in small, precise handwriting that definitely wasn't his. The girl stood at the main table, staring at a stack of unsorted campaign journals from the border wars. Adrian closed the door behind him. The sound echoed in the circular room. She didn't react. "I know you can hear me," Adrian said quietly. "And I know you understand every word I'm saying. The question is whether you'll acknowledge it." Nothing. Not even a flicker. He walked closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. "Here's what I think. I think you're highborn, educated beyond anything a common servant would ever receive. I think you've had military training, probably from a young age. And I think you're hiding from something so dangerous that you'd rather be sold as a slave than risk being found." Still nothing. Adrian leaned against the table, crossing his arms. "I also think you've been listening to everything in this household, learning our routines, our defenses, our weaknesses, mapping escape routes, planning for contingencies, because that's what a soldier does in enemy territory. Except," he paused, "I'm not sure we are enemies. Are we?" The girl swayed slightly, her eyes focused on nothing. "Fine," Adrian said. "Keep your secrets, but understand this. I'm going to test you. I'm going to leave information accessible. Maps, documents, strategic plans. And I'm going to watch what you do with that information. If you're a spy, you'll try to pass it on. If you're something else..." He let the sentence hang. He pushed off from the table and walked to the door. "Oh, and one more thing. There's a map in the bottom drawer of that cabinet. It's locked, but the key is under the inkwell. The map shows the location of every vain sympathizer I've identified in the northern provinces. People who still believe the old royal family was betrayed. People who might be interested in supporting a legitimate heir, if one existed." He opened the door, then looked back. The girl hadn't moved. "I'll be back tonight," Adrian said, "to see if that lock has been touched." He left. Behind him, in the silent library, the girl stood perfectly still for exactly 3 minutes. Then she walked to the cabinet. Adrian spent the day handling normal ducal business, but his mind was on the library. He'd set a trap, yes, but also an olive branch. If the girl was Alara Vane, the map he'd mentioned would be invaluable. It showed safe houses, sympathizers, possible allies, everything she'd need to build a resistance movement. It was also completely real. Not a fake, not a test, with false information. Genuine intelligence he'd compiled over 5 years. If she took it, she'd have something worth dying to protect. And he'd have proof of her identity, because only someone planning to reclaim the throne would risk touching that map. If she didn't take it, well, that would tell him something else. Either she wasn't who he thought, or she was more cautious than he'd given her credit for. The afternoon crawled past. Reports from the estates, meetings with the household steward, a brief, unpleasant conversation with a tax collector from the capital who wanted to know why Ravenscar's payments were always exactly on time, but never a copper more. "Because I pay what's owed," Adrian had told him flatly. "Not what's extorted." The tax collector had left unhappy. Adrian didn't care. Finally, as the sun began to set, he made his way back to the library. The door was ajar. Inside, the girl was gone. The day's work was complete. More books sorted, more maps cataloged, everything neat and precise. Adrian went to the cabinet. The lock was untouched. The key still under the inkwell, exactly where he'd left it. But when he opened the drawer, he knew immediately that the map had been moved. Nothing obvious, the casual observer would never notice. But Adrian had positioned it with the northern edge exactly aligned with a scratch on the drawer's bottom. Now it was rotated maybe 3 degrees off. She'd looked at it, studied it, memorized it, then put it back and locked the cabinet without taking the key. Adrian felt something close to admiration. She'd known it was a test, had known he'd check. So she'd taken the information but left no evidence that could be used against her. Smart, dangerously smart. He was still standing there thinking when Marcus appeared in the doorway. "We've got a problem," his lieutenant said grimly. "Define problem." "Visitors. 3 riders just came through the gate. Royal messengers, by their colors." Adrian's stomach dropped. "Casimir's people?" "Direct from the capital. They're asking to speak with you immediately, and they brought a sealed warrant. This couldn't be coincidence. Not now. Not when he was this close to confirming the girl's identity." "Did they say what they want?" "Just that it's a matter of imperial security. They're waiting in the Great Hall." Adrian straightened, forcing his expression into cold neutrality. "Then let's not keep them waiting." The 3 messengers wore the king's livery, black and gold, with the imperial eagle embroidered on their cloaks. 2 were guards, professional soldiers with hard eyes and scarred hands. The 3rd was a clerk, thin and nervous, clutching a leather document case like a shield. They stood in the center of Ravenscar's great hall, looking around with poorly concealed disdain at the austere furnishings. Adrian entered and they immediately bowed. Not deeply, just enough to satisfy protocol while making clear they represented higher authority. "Duke Blackmore," the clerk said, his voice high and reedy, "we bring greetings from His Imperial Majesty, King Casimir." "How fortunate for me," Adrian replied, his tone suggesting it was anything but. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" The clerk produced a sealed document from his case. "A royal warrant, Your Grace. His Majesty has authorized a search of all northern estates for fugitives and traitors." Adrian's expression didn't change, but his mind raced. "Traitors? How dramatic. What specifically are you searching for?" "That information is classified. We require your cooperation in inspecting your household, your staff, and your records." "Of course," Adrian said smoothly. "I'm always eager to demonstrate my loyalty to the crown. Though I must ask, do you have any specific intelligence suggesting fugitives in my household, or is this a random inspection?" The clerk's eye twitched. "We have reports of suspicious movement in the northern provinces. Several estates have been searched already. Yours is merely next on the list." "Merely. Right." Adrian gestured broadly. "Then by all means, begin your search. My lieutenant, Marcus, will provide access to any areas you wish to inspect. I have nothing to hide." The clerk looked almost disappointed. "Very well, we'll start with the servant quarters." "Excellent choice, this way." As they moved through the estate, Adrian's mind calculated rapidly. If they were looking for vain sympathizers, they'd search his study. They'd find his locked drawer, demand it be opened, discover the evidence he'd compiled. But if they were looking for the princess specifically, if somehow they'd heard rumors, if they had informants, they'd search the servants. And a mute girl covered in soot, recently purchased from a slave auction, would be exactly the kind of suspicious character they'd investigate. He had to get to her first. While the messengers inspected the servant quarters, Adrian caught Marcus's eye and jerked his head toward the stairs. Marcus nodded imperceptibly and began asking the clerk loud questions about search protocols, buying time. Adrian took the back stairs 3 at a time, heading for the library. The girl was there, shelving books with mechanical precision. "They're searching the household," Adrian said without preamble. "Royal messengers. They'll be here within minutes. If you're who I think you are, you need to decide right now, trust me, or run." For the first time since he'd bought her, the girl looked directly at him. Her eyes were sharp, alert, calculating. "I can hide you," Adrian continued quickly. "There's a space behind the north bookshelf. It's not on any architectural plans. Even if they search thoroughly, they won't find it. But you'll have to trust me completely. No guarantees, no promises. Just a chance." The girl stared at him for 5 long seconds. Then she spoke. Her voice was rough from disuse, barely above a whisper, but clear. "Why would you help me?" Adrian felt his breath catch. Hearing her speak was like watching a corpse come to life. The transformation from empty shell to conscious person was jarring. "Because," he said carefully. "I think the current king is a tyrant, and I think you might be the key to removing him." "You don't know who I am." "Don't I?" Her expression hardened. "You're making assumptions." "Am I wrong?" Footsteps on the stairs. Voices. The messengers were coming. The girl's eyes darted to the door, then back to Adrian. Decision time. "The bookshelf," Adrian hissed. "North wall. 3 books down, second from the left. Push it inward. There's a lever. Move." She hesitated one more second. Then she ran. Adrian watched her disappear behind the bookshelf, heard the soft click of the hidden mechanism. The shelf swung back into place seamlessly. He just sat down at the main table, apparently absorbed in reading a military treatise, when the door burst open. The clerk entered, flanked by the 2 guards. "Duke Blackmore, we need to inspect this room." Adrian looked up slowly. "Of course. Though I should warn you, the organization system is complex. Try not to disturb anything." "We'll disturb whatever we need to disturb." They began searching, methodically, professionally. Opening drawers, checking behind furniture, examining every book for hidden compartments. One of the guards stopped at the north bookshelf, ran his hand along the spines. Adrian kept his expression bored, but his hand drifted casually toward the knife in his boot. The guard pushed on the shelf. It didn't move. He grunted and moved on. The search took 20 minutes. They found nothing. "Satisfied?" Adrian asked when they finished. The clerk's jaw tightened. "We still need to inspect your personal quarters and interview your staff." "Be my guest, though I should mention that my head cook gets violent when interrupted during dinner preparation. Interview her at your own risk." They searched the entire estate. Every room, every closet, every storage space. They questioned the servants. "Where were you purchased? How long have you worked here? Have you seen anything suspicious?" The kitchen staff, to Adrian's relief, proved remarkably unhelpful. "Suspicious?" Marna repeated when asked. "Depends. Is bad cooking suspicious? Because the new girl can't season worth a damn." "What new girl?" the clerk demanded. "The mute one, Ash. His Grace bought her a few weeks back. Useless thing, but she cleans adequately." "Where is she now?" Marna shrugged. "Library, probably. That's where she's been assigned." "Why?" "You think a brain-damaged servant girl is your fugitive?" She laughed. "That'd be the day." The clerk's expression suggested he did not appreciate the humor. They questioned more servants, got similar answers. The new girl was mentioned, but always dismissively. Brain-damaged, mute, useless, barely functional. Finally, as night fell, the messengers gave up. "We'll be filing a report," the clerk told Adrian stiffly. "His Majesty will be informed of your cooperation." "I live to serve," Adrian said with absolutely no sincerity. They left. Adrian waited until their horses disappeared down the road, waited another hour to be sure. Then he returned to the library. The room was empty. "They're gone," he said to the apparently vacant space. Silence. "You can come out. I give you my word. No one else is here." More silence. Then slowly, the north bookshelf shifted. The hidden door opened. The girl emerged, covered in dust, her face streaked with sweat despite the cold. She'd been in there for hours, barely breathing, listening to guards walk past her hiding place again and again. She looked at Adrian with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome." "Now," he closed the door firmly. "We need to talk, really talk, because those messengers will be back. Casimir's tightening the net, and if you want to survive, you're going to need more than clever hiding places." The girl, no, the woman, because Adrian could see now that was what she was, not a child, but a survivor who'd spent a decade playing dead, sat down heavily in one of the reading chairs. "I'm not who you think," she said. "Yes, you are. You can't prove it." "I don't need to prove it, I know." She closed her eyes. "Then you know talking to me is treason. Helping me is treason. If they find out, I'll be executed right beside you," Adrian finished calmly. "I'm aware of the risks. The question is, what are you planning to do? Keep hiding forever? Because that's not sustainable. Eventually they'll find you. I've survived 10 years, by luck and discipline. But luck runs out, and you know it. or you wouldn't have let yourself end up in a slave auction." She flinched, hit a nerve. "What happened?" Adrian asked more gently. "To force you into the market?" For a long moment, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then she spoke. "The village where I was hiding, farmhouse, far north, near the border. The family thought I was a refugee from the coastal raids, brain damaged from trauma. They were kind, fed me, let me work in exchange for shelter." Her voice was hollow. "Then the tax collectors came. The family couldn't pay, couldn't afford to keep feeding extra mouths, so they sold me to cover their debt. And I let them, because the alternative was revealing myself and getting everyone killed." Adrian felt something cold settle in his chest. Not pity. Pity was useless, but a grim understanding of just how completely alone this woman had been. "Your family is dead," he said. Statement, not question. "Yes." "All of them?" A pause. "I don't know. My brothers, they were killed that night. I saw the bodies. But," she took a shaky breath, "there were rumors after. That one might have survived, might have been taken prisoner, but I couldn't verify, couldn't risk investigating. If I showed myself, they'd use me to draw him out. If he's even alive." "Which brother?" "Darius. The younger one. He was 9 during the coup. Would be 19 now." Her hands clenched. "Sometimes I dream he's still out there, locked in some black cell, waiting for rescue that will never come. And I'm here, hiding like a coward, while he suffers." "You're not a coward," Adrian said flatly. "You're a survivor. There's a difference." "Is there?" She looked up, and for the first time he saw the depth of pain in those eyes. 10 years of grief, guilt, and grinding survival. "I let them hunt me like an animal, let myself be sold as property, cleaned floors while my family's murderer sits on their throne. What does that make me if not a coward?" "Smart," Adrian said. "Patient. Disciplined enough to wait for the right moment instead of throwing your life away on pointless revenge." "And when is the right moment?" The question came out bitter. "When I'm 30? 40? When I'm too old to matter? When everyone who remembers my family is dead and gone?" Adrian leaned forward. "The right moment is when you have the resources, the allies, and the proof to win. Not to die gloriously, but to actually win." She stared at him. "You've been planning something." "Yes." "For how long?" 5 years. Since I saw what Casimir's policies were doing to the northern provinces. Since I realized the coup was built on lies and maintained through brutality." He held her gaze. "I've compiled evidence. Testimonies from soldiers who participated in the palace attack. Financial records showing the bribes. Documents proving Casimir planned the massacre months in advance. Everything needed to destroy his legitimacy." "But not the legitimacy to replace him," she finished. "You need an heir, a real one." "Yes." "So this is a transaction. You protect me. I become your figurehead." "No," Adrian said sharply. "This is an offer. I protect you and give you the tools to fight back. You decide whether to use them. I won't force you onto a throne you don't want. But I also won't stand by and watch you waste yourself cleaning floors when you could be ending a tyrant's reign." She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Why? Really, you could have exposed me, collected the reward, secured your own position. Why take this risk?" Adrian considered lying, giving her some noble answer about justice and honor, but she deserved the truth. "Because I'm tired," he said quietly. "Tired of watching good people suffer under corrupt leadership. Tired of enforcing laws I know are unjust. Tired of sending men to die in wars fought only to enrich the already wealthy. And because," he met her eyes, "because I've spent my life serving. First my father, then the military, then the current regime. For once I want to fight for something I actually believe in, even if it kills me." The silence stretched. Finally she nodded. "Ilara. My name is Ilara Vane." "I know. And you understand what you're offering. If we do this, if we move against Casimir, it ends with one of us on the throne and the other dead. Probably both of us dead. There's no middle ground." "I understand." "Then tell me what you're planning, all of it. Because if I'm going to burn my life down fighting for a crown I'm not sure I want, I need to know it's not for nothing. So Adrian told her. He explained about the winter masquerade in the capital, the one event where every noble in the empire would be gathered in one place. How he'd secured an invitation despite his usual avoidance of court politics. He explained the evidence he'd compiled and how it could be presented to the assembled nobles all at once, forcing them to confront the truth about their king. And he explained the gamble. If we expose the coup publicly, in front of witnesses Casimir can't silence, we create a crisis of legitimacy. But we need you there. Not as a rumor, not as a ghost story. As a living, breathing heir with the authority to challenge his claim. Alara's expression was bleak. He'll have me killed the moment I reveal myself. Not if we do it right. Not if we have enough witnesses and enough guards who remember their oaths to the old royal family. The palace guard swore fealty to the Vane line. Some of them still honor that even now. If you can invoke the old codes, if you can prove you're who you claim to be, he leaned forward. There's a chance. A small one. But a chance. And if it fails, then we die. Probably badly. Possibly after torture. Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact. I won't lie and say it's safe. It's not. It's possibly the stupidest plan I've ever conceived, but it's also the only plan that has any chance of actually working. Alara stood and walked to the window, stared out at the dark sea. My whole life has been hiding, playing dead, being invisible. You're asking me to walk into the palace, into the heart of enemy territory, and announce myself to the man who killed my family. Yes. That's insane. Probably. She turned back. When is this masquerade? 3 months, winter solstice. That's not enough time to prepare. It's all we have. Casimir's intensifying the search. Those messengers today, they'll be back. They'll keep searching, keep tightening the net. Eventually, luck runs out. We move now, or we lose the chance entirely. Alara closed her eyes. Adrian could see the war happening behind them, fear fighting with hope, survival instinct battling against duty. Finally, she opened her eyes. If I do this, she said quietly, I need to know something first. My brother Darius. You said you've compiled evidence. Do your sources mention him? Is there any indication he's alive? Adrian hesitated. He'd seen the references in the documents. Fragmentary mentions of a young prisoner in the Black Tower. No name, no confirmation. But the timing matched. There are rumors, he said carefully. Unconfirmed. Reports of someone held in the capital's maximum security prison. The descriptions match your brother's age, but I can't promise it's him. But it might be. It might be? Alara's jaw tightened. Then I need more than a plan to expose Casimir. I need a plan to get Darius out, because I'm not reclaiming a throne while my brother rots in a cell. Either we save him too, or this whole thing is pointless. That complicates things significantly. I don't care, those are my terms. Adrian studied her, saw the steel behind those eyes. This woman had survived a decade of hell. She wasn't bluffing. All right, he said, then we plan for both. Exposure and rescue. Though I should warn you, a sound from the hallway cut him off. Footsteps. Running. The library door slammed open. Marcus stood there, breathing hard, his face white. We've got a serious problem, he gasped. The assassin, he's in the estate. He's already killed 2 guards, and he's asking for the Vane princess by name. Time stopped. Adrian's hand went to his sword even as his mind raced through impossible calculations. An assassin. Inside Ravenscar, asking for Alara by name, which meant the messengers hadn't left empty-handed after all, which meant someone had talked, which meant they were already out of time. Where? Adrian's voice cut like a blade. East Wing, moving toward the servant quarters. He came over the wall during the shift change. Professional? Silent. We didn't know he was inside until he put a knife through Garrett's throat. Marcus was already backing into the hallway, sword drawn. I've got men mobilizing, but this bastard moves like smoke. He's hunting Adrian, and he knows exactly what he's looking for. Alara had gone pale, but her voice was steady. How many? Just one that we've seen, but one's enough if he's good. Marcus's eyes flicked to her, then back to Adrian. Understanding passed between them. This changed everything. We need to get her out. Now. No. Alara's voice was quiet but absolute. Running confirms who I am, and he'll just follow. Better than dying here, Marcus shot back. Is it? She looked at Adrian. If he's professional, he's been watching. He knows the estate layout, the guard rotations, probably the exact location of every exit. We run. He picks us off. We need to flip the script. Adrian felt a cold smile touch his lips. You want to hunt the hunter. I want to not die like a rabbit in a trap. Her hand went to her belt and came up holding a kitchen knife that had definitely not been there a moment ago. The blade was worn but wickedly sharp. She held it like someone who knew exactly how to use it. I've survived 10 years by being smarter than the people hunting me. I'm not about to stop now. Marcus looked at Adrian. She's insane. Probably, Adrian agreed. But she's also right. We can't outrun a professional assassin in a fortified estate. He's got every advantage. Unless we use the terrain, Alara finished. This is your fortress. You know every stone, every passage. He doesn't. Not really. He's operating on intelligence, but intelligence is always incomplete. A scream cut through the night, distant, anguished. Then silence. 3 dead now, Marcus said grimly. We need to decide. Fast. Adrian's mind kicked into tactical mode, the same cold clarity that had kept him alive through 2 decades of warfare. Marcus, pull the guards back to defensive positions. Protect the staff. Create a perimeter around the Great Hall and hold it. And you? I'm going hunting with the princess. We're going to give this assassin exactly what he wants. That's suicide. That's bait. Adrian turned to Alara. How good are you, really? Not trained as a child good. Combat ready good. She met his eyes without flinching. I killed 3 of Casimir's men the night of the coup. I was 7 years old and I used a fireplace poker. Since then, I've spent 10 years making sure I'd never be helpless again. So yes, I'm good enough. Then here's the plan. We let him find us, but on our terms in a location we control. The North Tower. Single entrance, stone walls, nowhere to run. He thinks he's cornering prey. Instead, he walks into a kill box. And if he doesn't take the bait, then we make it irresistible. Adrian looked at Marcus. Spread the word among the household. The mute servant girl ran to the North Tower when the attack started. Make it loud. Make it obvious. Let the rumor spread. Marcus's expression said he thought they were both insane, but he nodded. 5 minutes. Then I'm sealing the Great Hall whether you're back or not. 5 minutes, Adrian agreed. Marcus disappeared into the corridor, already shouting orders. The sounds of organized chaos echoed through the estate. Guards mobilizing, servants being herded to safety, doors slamming and bolts sliding home. Adrian turned to Alara. The North Tower is 100 yards from here. We move fast, we move quiet, and we trust each other completely. Understood? Understood. And if this goes wrong, if I fall, you run. Don't stop. Don't look back. Get to the stables, take Fenrir, and ride until you hit the border. There are people in the northern settlements who'll hide you. I'm not leaving you to die. You are if I order it, because one of us needs to survive this, and you're more important than I am. Her jaw tightened, but she nodded. They moved. The corridors of Ravenscar were built for defense, narrow, winding, with sharp corners and overlapping sight lines. Adrian had walked these halls for 15 years. He knew every stone, every shadow, every place where an attacker could hide, or where a defender could set an ambush. They took the servants' passage, a cramped stairway that connected the main floors but was too narrow for comfortable sword work. Alara moved behind him, her footsteps ghost silent despite the urgency. That kitchen knife was still in her hand, held low and ready. You've done this before, Adrian murmured as they climbed. Escaped assassins? Once or twice. Her voice was barely a whisper. Farmhouse outside Greywater. 2 men came hunting. I heard them breaking in. Got out through the root cellar and collapsed the entrance behind me. They spent 3 days digging while I watched from the forest. Why not just run? Needed to see their faces, know who was hunting me, know how close they'd come. A pause. One of them had the royal executioner's mark tattooed on his wrist, Casimir's personal killer's. Adrian filed that information away. The executioners were elite, trained since childhood, utterly loyal, and notoriously effective. If this assassin was one of them, they were in serious trouble. They reached the third-floor landing. Adrian paused, listening. Silence. Too much silence. The normal sounds of the estate, servants moving, guards calling positions, the distant clatter of kitchen work, had stopped, as if the entire fortress was holding its breath. "He's close," Elara breathed. Adrian felt it too. The pressure in the air, the predatory stillness of something dangerous nearby. He drew his sword slowly, minimizing the sound of steel on leather. The blade was practical. No decoration, no ceremony, just 30 inches of northern steel that had killed more men than he cared to count. They moved into the north wing. The corridor here was older, part of the original fortress. Stone walls, narrow windows, ancient tapestries hanging moth-eaten and forgotten. Adrian's grandfather had used this section for storage. Now it was mostly abandoned, perfect for an ambush. Halfway down the corridor, Adrian saw the first sign, a smear of blood on the floor, fresh, still glistening. Elara saw it too. Her grip tightened on the knife. They stepped over it and kept moving. The north tower entrance stood open. Beyond, a spiral staircase climbed into darkness. The tower had been built as a final defensive position, a place where defenders could make a last stand if the fortress fell. Thick walls, minimal openings, only one way in or out. Adrian had stocked it with weapons years ago. Swords, bows, spare armor. Everything needed to hold against a siege. Now he was betting their lives it would be enough to handle one assassin. They climbed. The stairs were worn smooth by centuries of use. Adrian counted steps automatically. 43 to the first landing, 43 more to the second. Muscle memory from youth, when his father had made him run these stairs in full armor. At the top landing, a single room. Circular, maybe 30 feet across. Arrow slits instead of windows. A weapons rack against one wall. A few crates of supplies. And in the center, a trapdoor leading to the roof. "Defensible," Elara said, scanning the space with a tactical eye. "But we're trapped if he brings reinforcements." "He won't. Assassins work alone. Can't split the payment." Adrian moved to the weapons rack. "Camus, can you shoot?" "Well enough." He tossed her a short bow and a quiver of arrows. She caught them smoothly, tested the draw weight, nodded approval. "Now we wait," Adrian said. "And if he doesn't come?" "He will. Men like this, they're hunters. They can't resist prey that's cornered." Adrian positioned himself beside the doorway, sword ready. "When he comes through that entrance, I'll take him head on. You provide cover from that corner. Aim for center mass. Don't try for fancy shots." "I know how to fight." "I know you do. I'm just saying." A sound from below, soft, almost inaudible. Footsteps on stone, slow, deliberate, coming up. Adrian and Elara exchanged glances. She moved to her position, knocking an arrow. He pressed himself against the wall, blade raised. The footsteps continued, steady, unhurried. The pace of someone who knew exactly where his targets were and wasn't concerned about the outcome. Adrian's jaw tightened. This wasn't fear. This was confidence. The assassin reached the landing, paused, then stepped through the doorway. Adrian swung. His blade met empty air. The assassin wasn't where he should have been. He'd read the ambush, anticipated the strike, moved before Adrian could connect. Instead, the assassin was suddenly inside Adrian's guard, a long knife driving toward his throat. Adrian twisted, felt the blade score his shoulder instead of his neck. Pain flared. He brought his pommel around in a savage strike at the assassin's head. The man ducked under it with liquid grace and drove a knee into Adrian's ribs. The air exploded from Adrian's lungs. He stumbled back, sword still up but his vision graying at the edges. An arrow hissed through the air. The assassin spun, impossibly fast, and the arrow that should have taken him in the chest instead grazed his arm. He didn't even flinch. And for the first time, Adrian got a clear look at him. Young, maybe 30, nondescript features, the kind of face that would disappear in a crowd. Dark clothing, no armor, weapons concealed but clearly numerous. And on his left wrist, visible as his sleeve shifted, a tattoo. The Royal Executioner's mark. "Princess Elara Vane," the assassin said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. His Majesty sends his regards. He's been looking for you for a very long time. Alara had already knocked another arrow. Tell Casimir he can deliver his regards in person, if he's brave enough. The assassin smiled. He thought you might say that, which is why he sent me. You see, you're not supposed to die tonight. You're supposed to be captured, alive, so he can execute you publicly and prove to the Empire that the Vane line is truly extinct. Going to be difficult to capture someone who's putting arrows through your skull, Alara said coldly. Is it? The assassin moved. Not toward Alara, toward the weapons rack. He grabbed a shield from the wall and brought it up just as Alara released. The arrow punched into the wood with a solid thunk. The assassin kept moving, using the shield as cover, closing the distance to Alara's position. Adrian launched himself forward, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. His sword came down in a brutal overhead strike aimed at the assassin's spine. The man sensed it somehow, rolled forward, came up still holding the shield, and kicked backward without looking. His boot caught Adrian in the knee. Something popped. Adrian went down hard, his leg buckling. The assassin was on Alara now. She dropped the bow, useless at close range, and brought up her knife. They clashed in a flurry of strikes too fast for Adrian to follow. Blade on blade, the screech of steel on steel. Alara fought with the desperate precision of someone who'd trained for exactly this scenario. Fast, efficient, no wasted motion. But the assassin was better. He had reach, experience, and the cold patience of someone who'd killed hundreds of times before. He caught Alara's wrist, twisted. The knife clattered to the floor. His other hand came up, fingers closing around her throat. Enough, he said. Come quietly, or Adrian's thrown dagger took him in the side. Not deep. The assassin's reflexes were too good for a kill shot, but deep enough. He grunted, released Alara, and spun to face Adrian, who was already up, knee screaming protest, sword raised. You're persistent, the assassin observed. Blood was spreading across his shirt, but he showed no sign of slowing. Admirable. Stupid, but admirable. I have a gift for stupid, Adrian said. Now how about you leave my fortress before I demonstrate just how stupid I can be? The assassin considered. His eyes flicked to Alara, who'd recovered her knife and was circling to flank him. Then back to Adrian. Tempting, but no. His Majesty was very clear. The princess comes with me, and anyone who interferes, he shrugged. Well, I'm authorized to be creative with obstacles. Then be creative, Adrian said, because she's not going anywhere. The assassin sighed. Very well. I tried. He moved again, but not toward Adrian or Alara, toward the trap door in the center of the room. Before either of them could react, he yanked it open and dropped something through. A glass vial. It shattered on the roof below. Smoke began pouring up through the opening. Thick, black, acrid, choking. Fire oil, the assassin said conversationally as the smoke filled the room, mixed with sulfur. The fumes are toxic. You've got maybe 2 minutes before you pass out, 4 before permanent damage. I, of course, have a breathing cloth. You don't. So here's the offer. Surrender the princess now, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and you both die while I walk out carrying her unconscious body. Your choice. Adrian's eyes were already watering. The smoke was spreading fast, filling the circular room. He could feel his throat constricting, his lungs rebelling. Alara was coughing, trying to cover her mouth with her sleeve. It wasn't working. They had seconds. What's it going to be, Duke Blackmore? The assassin asked. Heroic stupidity or practical survival? Adrian looked at Alara through the thickening smoke, saw her dark eyes meet his, saw the calculation happening behind them. Then she did something that shocked him to his core. She smiled. Actually, she rasped, there's a third option. And she ran for the arrow-slit window. No! Adrian lunged for her, but she was already moving. She grabbed the edge of the narrow opening, pulled herself up with shocking strength, and squeezed through the gap that should have been too small for a human body. Alara! But she was gone. Through the window, into the night, into a 100-foot drop to the rocks and sea below. The assassin stood frozen, clearly not expecting that response. Adrian used his shock. He grabbed the nearest crate and hurled it at the assassin. The man blocked with the shield, but Adrian was already moving. He made it to the trapdoor, jumped through, landed on the roof in a sprawl that sent fresh agony through his damaged knee. The cold air was a blessing after the toxic smoke. He gulped it down, coughing, trying to clear his lungs, and saw Alara. She hadn't fallen. She'd caught the edge of a decorative outcropping 10 feet down, a gargoyle's head that jutted from the tower wall. Now she hung there, fingers white with strain, feet scrabbling for purchase on the stone. "Little busy. Here," she gasped. Adrian looked around desperately. Rope. He needed rope. A crash from above. The assassin was coming through the trapdoor. No time. Adrian did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed the edge of the roof, swung his legs over, and dropped. His boots hit the gargoyle outcropping with a crack that might have been stone or bone. He couldn't tell. His knee screamed, but he was there, one hand locked on the gargoyle, the other reaching for Alara. "Take my hand!" She looked up at him. Her face was white with strain. "I can't. I let go. I fall." "You let go. I catch you. Trust me." Above them, the assassin appeared at the roof edge, looked down, smiled. "Touching," he called. But pointless. There's nowhere to go, no way down, no... He stopped, because Alara had started to laugh. It was a wild sound, half hysterical, half defiant. The laugh of someone who'd stared down death so many times it had lost its power. "You're right," she called up. "There's nowhere to go, no escape, no clever plan." She looked at Adrian. Except the one thing a royal executioner would never expect from a princess. The one thing Casimir trained you to predict against, but never truly believe we'd do. Understanding hit Adrian like cold water. "Alara, no. Tell my brother I'm sorry," she whispered, and she let go. Not up, toward Adrian's outstretched hand. Down, into the fall, into the sea. Adrian's roar of denial was lost in the wind. He watched her fall, watched her body arc through empty space, arms spread, back straight. A dive, deliberate and controlled. She hit the water 100 feet below with an impact that should have killed her. The spray rose white in the moonlight. Then she was gone. Swallowed by the black northern sea, Adrian stared at the water, his mind refusing to process what had just happened. The assassin's voice drifted down, oddly bemused. "Well, that's unfortunate. His Majesty wanted her alive." A pause. "I don't suppose she can swim." Adrian's response was automatic. "Like a fish. Royal children are trained in water survival from age 4. Then she might survive the fall and the cold. For a few minutes. Before hypothermia sets in." The assassin sounded genuinely regretful. "Pity. I hate incomplete contracts. Makes my reputation suffer." He disappeared from the edge. Adrian hung there alone, clinging to a gargoyle on the side of a tower, staring at the water where Alara Vane, last heir to the throne, had just thrown herself rather than be captured. His knee was on fire. His shoulder was bleeding. His hands were going numb from the cold and the strain. And somewhere far below, in the freezing water, a princess was either swimming for her life or drowning in the dark. Adrian made a decision. He started to climb. Not down. Impossible without rope. Up. Back to the roof. His damaged knee made every movement agony, but he forced himself to keep moving. One handhold, one foothold, inch by brutal inch. He made it to the roof edge, hauled himself over, lay there gasping. The assassin was gone. Retreated while his target escaped. Professional enough to know when a contract was failed. Marcus appeared through the trapdoor, sword drawn, face frantic. "Adrian, I heard... Where's the girl?" "Water," Adrian gasped. "She jumped. We need to get to the shore now. She might still be alive." "Adrian, it's been 2 minutes. In water that cold." "I know!" He forced himself to his feet. His knee buckled. Marcus caught him. "I know the odds, but I've seen her survive impossible things before. We search until we find her, dead or alive. Those are my orders." Marcus's expression was grim, but he nodded. "The assassin?" "Fled. He'll report back to Casimir. Tell him the princess is dead, which gives us a small window, if she survived. And if she didn't?" Adrian looked at the black water below. "Then we burn this empire down anyway. In her name. In her family's name. For every person Casimir has murdered in his quest to keep a throne he stole. They moved as fast as Adrian's damaged knee would allow. Down the tower stairs, through the fortress, out a side gate to the cliff path that led to the rocky beach below. The path was treacherous in daylight. At night, with an injured knee, it was suicidal. Adrian didn't care. He half climbed, half fell down the steep trail. Marcus beside him, steady and silent. The sound of waves crashing grew louder. They reached the beach, dark water, dark rocks, dark sky. No moon now, hidden behind clouds. Spread out, Adrian ordered. Search the shoreline, look for anything, clothing, debris, a body. They searched. Adrian limped along the water's edge, eyes scanning desperately. The cold bit through his clothes. The spray soaked him. His knee felt like it was being sawed in half with every step. Nothing, no sign of her. She was gone, drowned, lost to the sea. He'd failed her. Adrian? Marcus's voice. Sharp. Urgent. Here! Adrian turned. Marcus was kneeling beside a dark shape on the rocks. A body. Small. Unmoving. No. Please, no. Adrian ran, or tried to. His knee gave out completely. He crawled the last 10 feet, reached the body. It was Alara. She lay on her side, soaked and still. Her lips were blue. Her skin was white as death. Water streamed from her hair and clothes. Adrian pressed his fingers to her throat, searching for a pulse. Nothing. He tried again, different position. Come on, come on. There. Faint, thready. But there. She was alive. Get her to the fortress, Adrian snapped. Now. Blankets, fire, everything. Move. Marcus scooped her up like she weighed nothing and started running. Adrian followed, his ruined knee screaming with every step. They burst through the fortress gates. Servants scattered. Someone shouted for the physician. They carried Alara to Adrian's private quarters, the only rooms with a fireplace large enough to warm her quickly. Marna appeared with blankets. The physician came running, a wizened man named Corwin who'd seen everything from battlefield injuries to plague. He took one look at Alara and started barking orders. Strip those wet clothes off her. All of them. Bundle her in dry blankets. Feed the fire. I need hot water, hot wine. And someone tell me what in the frozen hell happened. She jumped off the north tower, Marcus said flatly. Into the sea. Survived somehow. Corwin's eyes widened. Jumped? From that height? She should be dead. Broken spine. Shattered ribs. Internal bleeding. Should be, Adrian agreed. But she's not. So fix her. The physician worked with efficient precision, checking for broken bones, listening to her breathing, forcing warm liquid between her blue lips. Adrian watched from the corner, dripping seawater and blood, his knee swelling to twice its normal size. You need treatment too, Marcus said quietly. Later. Your knee? Later. They watched in tense silence. Minutes crawled past. Then Alara coughed. Water came up. She turned her head, retching, expelling seawater from her lungs. Her eyes fluttered open. For a moment she seemed confused, disoriented. Then her gaze found Adrian. Her voice was a rasping whisper. Did I survive? Adrian felt something tight loosen in his chest. You survived. Good. She coughed again. More water. That would have been embarrassing. Dramatic death dive, then just dead. Despite everything, Adrian almost smiled. You insane woman. You could have told me you were going to jump. No time, and you would have argued. She tried to sit up, failed, fell back against the pillows. The assassin? Gone. He thinks you're dead. Perfect. Her eyes drifted closed. Let him think that. Let Casimir think that. Easier to plan when they're not looking. Plan what? You nearly died. Nearly isn't dead. She forced her eyes open again. I told you, I'm done hiding. Done running. That jump? That was the last time I run from anything. From now on, a weak smile. From now on, I fight. Adrian looked at this woman, half-drowned, hypothermic, barely conscious, who'd just thrown herself off a tower rather than surrender. And he understood. She wasn't reckless. She was testing herself, proving she could do the impossible. Because the plan ahead, exposing Casimir, reclaiming the throne, rescuing her brother, all of it was impossible. And she needed to know she was strong enough to try. Rest, he said quietly. We'll plan when you're recovered. No time for rest. The assassin will report back. Casimir will know I was here. He'll come for you, for everyone who helped me. Let him come. Adrian's voice was cold iron. I've fought worse than a usurper king, and won. Alara's eyes searched his face. Why are you doing this? Really, you could still turn me in, claim I died escaping, clear yourself of all charges. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the truth he'd been avoiding. Because when I was 17, I watched Casimir's soldiers burn a village that couldn't pay their taxes. Men, women, children, everyone. And I was ordered to help, to stand there in my officer's uniform and watch them die, to make sure no one escaped. His jaw tightened. I followed orders. Because I was a good soldier. Because I believed in the chain of command. And I've regretted it every day since. He met her eyes. I can't change what I did. Can't bring those people back. But I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Can make sure the man who gave those orders answers for them, even if it costs me everything. Alara was silent. Then she reached out with one trembling hand and gripped his wrist. Then we make him answer together, she whispered. You bring the evidence. I bring the legitimacy. And we end this. One way or another. Adrian covered her hand with his. One way or another? Outside, dawn was breaking. The first light touched the sea, turning it from black to gray. And in a tower room in Ravenscar, a dead princess and a guilt-haunted duke made a pact to overthrow an empire. The physician cleared his throat. I hate to interrupt this touching moment, but I need to examine her shoulder properly. There's significant bruising that suggests... He stopped, went very still. Adrian saw what he was looking at. On Alara's left shoulder revealed when the blanket shifted. A birthmark. 7 points. Arranged in a perfect star. The mark of House Vane. Present on every member of the royal bloodline. Impossible to fake, impossible to remove, proof absolute of who she was. Corwin looked up slowly. His face had gone white. Your Grace, he said carefully, I believe we need to discuss patient confidentiality. Very carefully. Adrian's hand went to his sword hilt. Not threatening, just ready. Can I trust you, Corwin? The physician was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Alara. Really looked at her, recognition and memory warring in his eyes. I was the palace physician, he said quietly. 10 years ago, before the coup, I delivered all 3 royal children, treated their childhood illnesses, taught the princess how to set a broken finger when she was 6. His voice cracked. I thought they were all dead. They are, Alara whispered, except me. Corwin's eyes filled with tears. Your Highness, I thought I'd never... Don't, she said gently. Don't call me that, not yet. I'm not a princess, not a queen, just a survivor trying to fix what was broken. Can you accept that? The old man nodded slowly. I can accept that. But understand, I swore an oath once, to protect the royal family, to serve the crown, and that oath didn't die when your parents did. Then serve by keeping this secret, Adrian said. Tell no one what you've seen here, not the staff. Not the guards. No one. Her survival depends on absolute secrecy. You have my word, Corwin looked between them, and my help. Whatever you're planning, whatever you need, I'm with you. We're planning treason, Adrian said bluntly. If we're caught, you'll be executed alongside us. Then I'll die for a worthy cause, better than dying in my bed having done nothing while evil reigned. The old physician straightened. Now let me finish treating my patient. She's got hypothermia, severe bruising, and mild shock. She needs rest, real rest, at least 2 days. We don't have 2 days, Alara protested. You'll have 2 days or you'll be useless when the time comes to fight, Corwin said firmly. I didn't keep you alive this long to watch you kill yourself through stubborn stupidity. Rest, heal. Then we'll talk about overthrowing kingdoms. Adrian found himself smiling despite everything. I like him. So do I, Alara murmured. Her eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion pulling her under. "Wake me if Casimir sends an army." "I will," Adrian promised. But she was already asleep. Adrian turned to Marcus, who'd been standing silent guard the entire time. "Status report. 2 dead guards, 3 injured. The assassin escaped over the south wall, left no trail. Professional to the end." Marcus paused. "And the household is terrified. They know something happened. They're asking questions. Tell them we were attacked by thieves. Nothing more. Nothing about the princess. Nothing about who the target was." "They're not stupid, Adrian. They'll figure it out." "Then we trust them to keep their mouths shut. Or we don't. Either way, we're committed now." Adrian limped toward the door. His knee was swelling badly. He needed it treated. "Increase the guard rotations, double the wall sentries, and send a message to the northern outposts. I want to know if any royal forces start moving in our direction." "You think Casimir will retaliate?" "I think he'll want confirmation that she's dead, which means more agents, more searches, more pressure." Adrian glanced back at the sleeping figure on his bed. "We've got maybe a week before he realizes she might have survived. After that," he shrugged, "we'd better be ready to move." "Move where?" "South. To the capital. To the winter masquerade." Adrian's expression hardened. "Ilara wanted to fight, so we'll give her a fight, the biggest one she's ever faced. And if we lose, then we die," Adrian said simply. "But we die standing, not hiding, not running, standing." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll start preparing, quietly." "Good. And Marcus? Thank you for trusting me on this." His lieutenant smiled grimly. "You saved my life in the border wars, twice. Figure I owe you at least one suicidal rebellion. Just try to make it a memorable one." "I'll do my best." Alone in his quarters with the sleeping princess and the aging physician, Adrian finally allowed himself to feel the weight of what had just happened. An assassin in his home, a princess in his bed, a rebellion taking shape, and somewhere in the capital, a tyrant king who would stop at nothing to eliminate the last threat to his stolen throne. The game had changed tonight. No more hiding, no more pretending. Now it was war. And Adrian intended to win. 2 days passed in tense preparation. Ilara recovered with the stubborn resilience of someone who'd spent a decade defying death. By the second morning, she was out of bed despite Corwin's protests, limping through the fortress corridors like a ghost learning to walk again. The bruising on her shoulder had faded from deep purple to sickly yellow. Her lungs still rattled when she breathed too deep, a reminder of the seawater she'd expelled. But she was alive. And more than that, she was focused. Adrian found her in the war library on the afternoon of the 3rd day, surrounded by maps and documents. She'd changed from the servant's rough tunic into clothes Marcus had borrowed from the quartermaster, a practical wool shirt and trousers that actually fit. Her hair was clean for the first time since he'd bought her, revealing its true color, dark auburn, not the muddy brown the soot had suggested. She looked up as he entered. "Your evidence is impressive, but incomplete." Adrian closed the door behind him. His knee was wrapped in tight bandages, the swelling reduced, but the pain constant. He'd refused Corwin's suggestion of a cane. Pride, probably. Or stubbornness. "Incomplete how?" "You've documented the bribes, the planning, the execution of the coup itself. But you're missing the most important piece, proof of what came after. The disappearances, the political prisoners, the people who spoke against Casimir and vanished." She tapped a finger on one of the maps. "There's a difference between overthrowing a king and proving the replacement is worse. We need both. Those records are in the capital, in the royal archives, heavily guarded. Then we get them before the masquerade. We're going there anyway. We just need to arrive early, quietly." She looked at him steadily. "You have contacts in the capital, don't you? People who could help us move unseen?" Adrian considered lying, decided against it. "A few. Merchants who owe me favors. Former soldiers who served under me before I retired north. And one archivist in the records office who shares my opinion of Casimir's tax policies." "Will they risk helping us?" "Depends on how we ask and what we offer in return." He limped to the table and sat heavily. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, we need to survive the journey. Second, we need to get you into the palace without being recognized. Third, we need to find my brother. Her voice was quiet but absolute. You said there were rumors of a prisoner in the Black Tower. I need to know if it's Darius, and if it is, I need to get him out. The Black Tower is the most secure prison in the Empire. No one escapes from there. No one's tried with royal authority backing them. She met his eyes. If I invoke the old command codes, if I can reach the guards who still remember their oaths, there's a chance. A small one, but a chance. Adrian shook his head slowly. You're talking about two different operations. Exposing Casimir at the masquerade is already suicide-level dangerous. Adding a prison break to the plan, I don't care. Steel in her voice now. I won't leave Darius to rot. Not when I'm this close. Not when I have allies for the first time in 10 years. So either you help me or I do it alone. But I'm getting him out. They stared at each other across the table. The silence stretched. Finally, Adrian sighed. You're going to get us all killed. Probably. And you don't care. I've been dead for 10 years. What's a little more risk? But there was pain beneath the bravado, raw and honest. He's my brother, Adrian. He's 19 years old, and he's spent the last decade in a cell because I wasn't strong enough to save him that night. I have to try. Adrian understood. He'd lost people too. Soldiers under his command, friends he couldn't save, civilians he'd failed to protect. Guilt was a weight that never lightened. All right, he said quietly. We try for both, the masquerade and the prison, but we do it smart, planned. No improvisation unless absolutely necessary. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We might still fail. We might, but at least we'll fail trying. She pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. Now, tell me everything you know about the Black Tower's security. They planned through the night. Adrian's knowledge of the capital was extensive. He'd spent 5 years there as a young officer before his posting to the northern borders. He knew the layout, the guard rotations, the places where security was tight and where it was merely theatrical. The Black Tower stood in the oldest part of the city, a pre-Empire structure built when the capital was still a fortified stronghold. It was designed to hold the most dangerous prisoners, traitors, assassins, prisoners of war too valuable to execute immediately. The security was brutal, triple walls, rotating guard shifts, no contact with the outside world. If Darius is there, Adrian said, sketching the tower's layout from memory, he'll be in the lower levels, maximum security. That means passing through at least 4 checkpoints, each with different guards who don't know each other's schedules. What about during the masquerade? Elara asked. Won't security be reduced? Everyone focused on the palace event? Possibly, but we can't count on it. Casimir's paranoid. He might actually increase security, thinking someone would try exactly what we're planning. Marcus entered carrying a tray of food. Bread, cheese, dried meat. He set it down without comment. Over the past 2 days, he'd transformed from skeptical lieutenant to co-conspirator. Not because he believed they'd win, Adrian suspected, but because he'd decided dying for a worthy cause beat living under tyranny. The men are asking questions, Marcus said, settling into a chair. About the attack. About the girl. I've kept them quiet so far, but rumors are spreading. What kind of rumors? Elara asked. That you're a noblewoman in hiding, that you're Adrian's secret lover, that you're a spy for a rival duke. Marcus shrugged. Take your pick. None of them are close to the truth, but all of them are making the household nervous. Then we give them a truth they can accept, Adrian said. Spread the word that she's my ward, distant relative whose family died in a fire. I'm providing protection until she comes of age. It's mundane enough to be believable. And when we ride south to the capital with her, we don't take her as a servant. We take her as what she's pretending to be, a young noblewoman under my guardianship. Get her proper clothes, a horse, everything needed to sell the fiction. Elara raised an eyebrow. You want me to pretend to be nobility? I thought the whole point was staying hidden. The best place to hide is in plain sight. A mysterious servant attracts attention. Aboard Noble's ward, nobody looks twice. Adrian pulled out another map, this one showing the roads to the capital. We'll travel with a small escort, Fast. 6 riders, maybe 8. Enough to look legitimate, but not so many were conspicuous. When do we leave? 3 weeks. The masquerade is in 5. We need time to establish ourselves in the capital, make contact with our allies, gather the additional evidence, and scout the Black Tower. He looked at Marcus. Can you assemble a team? Men we trust absolutely. Men who won't ask too many questions. I can get you 6, maybe 8 if we're lucky. But Adrian, they'll need to know the truth eventually. You can't take men into a fight like this without telling them what they're really fighting for. I know. I'll tell them. Just not yet. Adrian's jaw tightened. First, I need to make sure we actually have a plan worth dying for. The next 2 weeks were a controlled storm of preparation. Clothes were commissioned from a traveling merchant, fine enough to be convincing, practical enough for fast movement. Alara stood for measurements with obvious discomfort, unused to being treated like someone who mattered. I hate this, she muttered as the seamstress fussed over the hem of a traveling dress. All this silk and nonsense. I can't fight in these clothes. You're not supposed to fight in them, Adrian said from where he sat reviewing supply lists. You're supposed to look harmless, decorative, beneath notice. I've spent 10 years being beneath notice. I'm tired of it. 2 more weeks, then you can be as noticeable as you want, preferably while surrounded by armed guards and political allies. She sighed but didn't argue further. Weapons were selected. Adrian chose practical over ceremonial. Good steel, reliable construction, nothing that would mark them as soldiers, but nothing useless either. Each member of the team would carry a sword, a knife, and a backup blade concealed somewhere on their person. Alara, to his surprise, requested a bow in addition to the standard weapons. I'm better with ranged attacks, she explained when he questioned it. Assassination training. My tutors believed a royal should know how to kill quietly from a distance. Just in case. Just in case of what? Exactly the situation we're in now. She tested the draw weight on several bows before selecting a compact hunting bow that could be concealed in a cloak. Being royal doesn't mean being safe. It means being a target. Better to be a target with options. The team came together slowly. Marcus handpicked each member, veterans who'd served with Adrian in the border wars, men who'd seen enough corruption to be willing to fight it. Willem, the gate guard who'd first spotted the assassin. Quiet, observant, deadly with a spear. Garrett's brother Thomas, burning with the need to avenge his sibling. Young, but skilled. A scarred archer named Kellen, who'd lost his farm to Casimir's tax collectors and had nothing left to lose. 2 brothers, former infantry, who'd been dishonorably discharged for refusing an order to burn a village. Their names were Rowan and Jarek, and they followed Adrian with the loyalty of men who'd found a cause worth fighting for. And finally, a surprise addition. Marna. The head cook cornered Adrian in his study one evening, arms crossed, expression brooking no argument. I'm coming with you, she announced. Adrian looked up from the document he was reading. Absolutely not. Not asking permission, telling you the plan. She stepped closer. That girl's been through hell. She needs someone who's not a soldier, not a strategist, not a man trained to see everything as a tactical problem. She needs someone who remembers she's human. Marna, we're riding into extreme danger. This isn't, you think I don't know danger? I survived the plague riots in the capital 20 years ago. Watched neighbors kill each other over bread. I know what people do when everything falls apart. Her voice softened. And I know what it's like to be alone in the middle of it. That girl needs an ally who isn't trying to use her for politics. She needs me. Adrian studied the older woman, saw the determination in her eyes, the same steel he'd seen in soldiers who'd decided to make a stand. You're aware this could end with all of us executed? He said quietly. Better than dying in bed having done nothing. I've cooked for enough corrupt lords to last a lifetime. Time I cooked for someone worth feeding. She jabbed a finger at him. So pack your lists and your strategies. I'm coming, and that's final. Despite everything, Adrian smiled. Understood. Welcome to the rebellion. About time someone said it out loud. 10 days before departure, a messenger arrived from the capital. Not a royal messenger this time. A private courier hired and paid through multiple intermediaries to ensure the message couldn't be traced. The letter bore no seal, no signature, just a simple code Adrian recognized. He read it in his study with Marcus and Alara present. "It's from the archivist," he said when he finished. "She's confirmed the existence of classified records detailing political prisoners. Locations, dates of arrest, charges, everything we need. But accessing them will require getting into the Royal Archives during a very specific window, when the masquerade is at its height and the archive guards are reduced for the celebration." "Can she get us in?" Marcus asked. "She says she can provide a path, side entrance, minimal guards, but once we're inside, we're on our own. If we're caught, she can't help us." Alara leaned forward. "What about the Black Tower? Did she mention it?" Adrian's expression darkened. "She did. There is a prisoner matching Darius's description. Age, timeline, everything fits. He's alive, and he's being held in the deepest cell, reserved for prisoners Casimir once kept hidden, but not killed." The relief on Alara's face was immediate and overwhelming. "He's alive." "Yes, but," Adrian hesitated, "the archivist says his condition is poor. 10 years in maximum security takes a toll. He may not be the brother you remember." "I don't care what condition he's in. I'm getting him out." Her voice was absolute. "Whatever he's become, whatever they've done to him, he's still my brother, and I'm not leaving without him." Adrian nodded slowly. "Then we plan for both operations simultaneously. The masquerade is our cover, the archives for evidence, and the prison break is our final act. It's going to be tight, dangerously tight. But if we coordinate perfectly—" "We won't coordinate perfectly," Marcus interrupted. "No plan survives contact with reality. Something will go wrong. Multiple things. We need contingencies." "Agreed. So we build in redundancies, multiple escape routes, backup plans for the backup plans. And we accept that improvisation will be necessary." They spent the next week refining every detail. Who would enter the archives? Who would approach the Black Tower? Who would maintain position at the masquerade to ensure their cover story held? The complexity was staggering. But slowly, impossibly, a plan took shape. 3 days before departure, Alara asked to speak with Adrian privately. They met in the library, their unofficial war room now, covered in maps and notes, and the accumulated evidence of Casimir's crimes. "I need to know something," she said without preamble. "If this goes wrong, if I'm captured and you have a chance to escape, will you take it?" Adrian considered lying. "Depends on the circumstances." "Adrian, I need the truth. Will you sacrifice yourself trying to save me, or will you prioritize the mission?" He met her eyes. "The mission is you. You're the heir, the legitimacy. Without you, all of this, the evidence, the planning, the allies, it's meaningless. So no, I won't sacrifice you for some abstract concept of completing the objective. If it comes down to a choice between your life and the plan, I choose your life. Every time." "That's a mistake." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." She shook her head. "You're thinking like a soldier, protecting the officer. But I'm not your commanding officer. I'm a symbol. And symbols are only valuable if they accomplish what they symbolize. If I die but Casimir falls and the evidence gets out, the mission succeeds. If I live but accomplish nothing, then we try again," Adrian interrupted. "Because you're not just a symbol to me. You're a person, a ridiculously stubborn, occasionally suicidal person who jumped off a tower rather than surrender. And the world needs more people like that, not fewer." She stared at him. "Why do you care?" "Really, you barely know me." "I know enough. I know you survived impossible odds. I know you never gave up, never broke, never stopped fighting. I know you're brave enough to risk everything for a brother you haven't seen in 10 years. And I know—" He paused, choosing words carefully. "I know that if you die, the Empire loses more than an heir. It loses someone who understands what it means to suffer. And that kind of ruler, someone who's been broken and rebuilt themselves, that's someone worth following." The silence stretched between them. "When this is over," Alara said quietly, "assuming we survive, I'm not staying on the throne." Adrian blinked. "What?" "I mean it. I'll take the crown long enough to stabilize things, root out Casimir's supporters, establish a legitimate government. then I'm abdicating, putting the choice of ruler back to the people or a council or whoever can do it better than me. Because I never wanted to be queen. I wanted to survive. And now that I have, now that I'm this close to actually winning, I realize I don't want the weight of a crown. I want freedom. Elara, I know it sounds insane. I know people have died for this crown, will die for it. But I can't be what everyone needs me to be. I can be the spark that starts the fire, the proof that Casimir's reign is illegitimate, but I can't be the ruler who rebuilds an empire. I'm too damaged, too angry, too... She gestured helplessly. Broken. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You're not broken. You're just honest about your limitations. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. So you understand why I can't. I understand that you're terrified of repeating the mistakes of the past, of becoming another monarch who loses touch with the people. I understand that survival taught you to distrust power. He leaned forward. But here's what you're not seeing. The fact that you don't want the crown, that you're willing to walk away from ultimate power, that makes you exactly the kind of ruler people need. Or it makes me a coward who's afraid of responsibility. No. It makes you someone who understands that leadership is service, not dominion, and that's rare, precious. His voice softened. But you're right about one thing. The choice should be yours. And whatever you decide, whether you keep the crown or pass it on, I'll support it. That's my promise. Elara's eyes glistened. You're a better man than this empire deserves. Then let's build an empire that deserves us both. She smiled, a real smile, unguarded and genuine. Deal. The night before departure, Adrian called a meeting of the entire team. They gathered in the Great Hall, 8 soldiers, 1 cook, and a duke with a ruined knee and a head full of treasonous plans. The fire crackled in the hearth. Outside, winter wind howled against the walls. Adrian stood before them, leaning slightly on a walking stick he'd finally accepted. His knee would never fully heal, Corwin had warned, but it would hold. It had to. You all know we're riding to the capital, he began. You know the official story. I'm presenting my ward at the Winter Masquerade, conducting business with the royal court, maintaining political connections. That's what everyone else will believe. He paused, looking at each face in turn. The truth is different. The truth is we're planning to expose King Casimir as a murderer and a usurper. We're going to present evidence of his crimes to the assembled nobility, and if we're very lucky and exceptionally skilled, we're going to walk out of that palace alive. Shocked silence. Thomas spoke first, his young voice uncertain. Your Grace, that's treason. Yes, it is. And if you want to walk away right now, I won't blame you. There's still time to step back from this. No one moved. You need to understand, Adrian continued, this isn't a military campaign with clear objectives and established rules of engagement. This is rebellion. Desperate, dangerous, possibly suicidal rebellion. If we're caught, there will be no trials, no mercy, just execution. For all of us. Willem cleared his throat. And the girl? Your ward. Who is she really? Adrian looked at Elara standing silent in the shadows. She stepped forward into the firelight. My name is Elara Vane, she said clearly, daughter of King Aldrich and Queen Maressa, sister to Princes Darius and Torin, last surviving heir of the royal bloodline that Casimir murdered 10 years ago. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, soldiers talking over each other, disbelief and shock and sudden understanding crashing together. Prove it, Roan demanded. Elara pulled down the collar of her shirt, revealing the 7-pointed star birthmark on her shoulder. The mark that couldn't be faked, that every child in the Empire learned about in history lessons. The proof absolute. The hall went silent again. Kellen, the archer, knelt. Your Highness? Don't. Elara's voice was sharp. I'm not a highness, not yet. Maybe not ever. Right now I'm just someone trying to fix what was broken. And I need help, your help. But I won't ask you to die for me without giving you a choice. She looked around at the assembled group. If you come with us, you'll be risking everything. Your lives, your futures, your families. For a plan that might fail. For a girl you barely know. For a cause that might already be lost. She took a breath. But if we succeed, if we actually pull this off, we change the empire. We end Casimir's reign of terror. We give people hope that justice can win, that power can be challenged, that the forgotten and discarded can rise up and matter. Jarek stood slowly. I lost my son to Casimir's war, conscripted and sent to die in a border skirmish that meant nothing. They didn't even send his body home. His voice was thick with grief and rage. If there's a chance to make that bastard pay, even a small chance, I'm in. My farm was burned for late taxes, Kellen added. Taxes I couldn't pay because the harvest failed due to weather. No mercy, no consideration, just flames and ash. I've wanted revenge for 5 years. This gives me that chance. I'm in. One by one, they pledged themselves. Thomas, because his brother had died protecting her. Willem, because he believed in the old oaths to the crown. Roan, because he'd seen what Casimir's rule had done to the empire. Marna, because she was tired of cooking for corrupt men. Marcus Lass, stepping forward with a grim smile. I followed you into worse odds, Adrian. Remember the siege at Ironholt? We were outnumbered 10-1 and you still found a way to win. This is just another impossible fight. And we'll win this one too. Adrian felt something tight loosen in his chest. Pride, gratitude, and a terrible responsibility. Then we ride at dawn, he said. To the capital, to rebellion, to justice, or to death, whichever comes first. To justice, they echoed. And in that moment, standing in a northern fortress with a handful of soldiers and one fugitive princess, Adrian believed they actually had a chance. Dawn broke cold and clear. The horses were saddled, supplies packed, weapons concealed beneath traveling cloaks. Alara wore the fine dress of a noble's ward, but beneath it, she'd strapped on leather armor and hidden blades, practical and prepared. She looked different than the soot-covered girl from the auction, confident, purposeful, like someone who'd remembered how to stand up instead of hide. Adrian mounted his horse with difficulty, his knee protesting the movement. But once in the saddle, he felt better, stronger. This was familiar territory, riding into danger with soldiers at his back and a cause worth dying for. Fenrir snorted and pawed the ground, eager to run. Easy, Adrian murmured. We've got a long road ahead. Alara rode up beside him on a gray mare Marcus had selected. Ready? No, but we're going anyway. He looked back at the fortress, at the home he might never see again. Let's end this. They rode out through the main gate as the sun cleared the horizon. Behind them, Ravenscar stood dark and silent against the winter sky. A fortress built to withstand siege. Ahead, the road south, toward the capital, toward power and politics and the dangerous game of exposing a king, toward rebellion. And somewhere in a black tower cell, a prince who'd spent 10 years waiting for rescue had no idea that his sister was coming, that the girl the empire had laughed at, the servant worth 5 copper coins, was riding toward him with an army of 8 soldiers, a cook, and enough evidence to shatter a kingdom. The journey had begun, and this time Alara Vane wasn't running. She was coming home. The capital city of Astorvale rose from the winter plains like a crown of stone and smoke. After 12 days of hard riding, the sight should have been magnificent. Instead, it filled Adrian with cold dread. This city had been built by kings who understood power, maintained by emperors who craved it, and now controlled by a tyrant who would kill anyone who threatened it. Somewhere in those twisted streets and gilded palaces, King Casimir sat on a stolen throne, completely unaware that the heir he'd tried to murder was riding through his gates. It's bigger than I remember, Alara said quietly, pulling her hood lower. They'd entered the city at dusk, just another group of travelers arriving for the winter masquerade. The streets were packed, merchants hawking last-minute costume supplies, nobles in covered carriages heading to rented townhouses, entertainers practicing routines in public squares. Perfect cover, perfect chaos. Adrian guided them to a modest inn near the merchant quarter, far from the noble district but close enough to the palace to move quickly when needed. The innkeeper asked no questions, just took Adrian's gold and showed them to their rooms. That night, they gathered in Adrian's chamber to finalize the plan. The masquerade is tomorrow night, Adrian said, spreading a hand-drawn map of the palace across the table. Security will be focused on the ballroom and the main entrances. That gives us windows of opportunity in 3 locations. He pointed to each in turn. The Royal Archives are here, East Wing, 2nd floor. Minimal guard presence during celebrations. Our contact will get us in through a servant's entrance at midnight. The Black Tower is here, Marcus added, marking a spot on a separate map of the prison district. Half a mile from the palace. We'll need to split the team. Some stay at the masquerade maintaining cover. Some go for the rescue. And the ballroom itself, Alara finished, studying the palace layout with intense focus. Where we expose Casimir, where everything either works or falls apart. The room was silent for a moment, everyone processing the enormity of what they were attempting. Marna spoke first. You're planning to break into the Royal Archives, rescue a prince from maximum security, and publicly accuse the king of murder, all in one night, while attending a party. When you say it like that, it sounds insane, Adrian admitted. Because it is insane. Probably, but it's also our only chance. He looked around at the assembled team. Last opportunity to walk away. After tonight, we're committed. No one moved. Good, Adrian said. Then let's go over the timing one more time. They planned until midnight, refining every detail, accounting for every variable they could predict. When they finally dispersed to their rooms, Adrian felt the familiar pre-battle tension settling into his bones. The calm before violence, the quiet before everything exploded. Alara stayed behind after the others left. I need to see him, she said. Before tomorrow, before everything starts. I need to know he's really there. Adrian understood. The Black Tower doesn't allow visitors. I don't care. I'll climb the walls if I have to. I just need to see him, to know he's alive, that this is real. Her voice cracked slightly. 10 years, Adrian. 10 years of hoping and not knowing. I can't wait another day. He studied her face, the desperation barely controlled, the need burning behind her eyes, and made a decision. Come on, he said, reaching for his cloak. We're going for a walk. The Black Tower loomed against the night sky like a jagged tooth. They approached from the south, staying in the shadows, 2 figures among many in a city that never fully slept. Adrian had changed into nondescript clothes, the kind worn by laborers and dock workers. Alara wore a servant's cloak, hood up, face hidden. There, Adrian murmured, pointing to a section of wall where torchlight didn't quite reach. Guard rotation happens every hour. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the next patrol. 10 minutes to do what? We can't break in. No, but we can get close enough to confirm he's there. Adrian pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside, a compact spyglass, military grade, expensive, practically invisible in the dark. The cells have narrow windows. If we can get to the right angle. They moved quickly and quietly, crossing the open ground to the tower's base. The stone was old, rough, providing handholds. Adrian's knees screamed protest as he climbed, but he forced himself upward. Alara followed, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent years learning to be invisible. 20 feet up, Adrian found a position wedged between 2 decorative buttresses. He extended the spyglass and scanned the tower's upper levels. Cell windows, dozens of them, dark and barred. Which level? Alara whispered. Lowest accessible floor, maximum security. He adjusted the angle, searching. Most cells were empty. A few showed shapes huddled in darkness, prisoners sleeping or too broken to move. Then he found it, a cell on the north side barely visible, and inside a figure sitting against the wall. Young, maybe 19 or 20, thin, dangerously thin. Dark hair hanging lank to his shoulders. But even from this distance, even through the limited view, Adrian could see the resemblance. The same bone structure as Alara, the same jaw, the same way of holding his head, even in captivity. Third window from the corner, Adrian said, handing her the spyglass. North side. Alara pressed it to her eye, searched, found the window, and went completely still. Adrian watched her face, saw recognition, shock, relief, grief, all crashing together in a moment of overwhelming emotion. It's him, she breathed. It's really him. He's alive. Her voice broke. He looks so small. He's been in there a long time, but he's alive, and tomorrow night, he won't be. She lowered the spyglass, tears streaming down her face. Thank you for this, for believing me, for helping me. Save the thanks for when we're all free and breathing. They climbed down and melted back into the city's shadows. But as they walked, Adrian noticed something. Alara's posture had changed. The weight she'd been carrying, the uncertainty, the fear that her brother might be dead, had lifted. Now she moved with purpose, with clarity. She'd seen what she was fighting for, and nothing would stop her now. The day of the masquerade dawned gray and cold. Adrian woke early and spent the morning making final preparations. Messages sent to their contact in the archives, weapons checked and rechecked, escape routes memorized, every detail that could be controlled. At noon, a package arrived at the inn. Inside, costumes for the masquerade, elaborate masks and formal attire that would allow them to blend with the noble guests. Adrian's was a simple black domino mask with silver trim. Alara's was more ornate, covering the upper half of her face in delicate silver filigree. I hate masks, she muttered, trying it on. Can't see peripheral threats. You'll manage, and it keeps people from recognizing you until we're ready to reveal. Assuming anyone would recognize me. I was 7 when they last saw me. The birthmark would give you away. We can't risk it. He adjusted his own mask. Besides, half the court will be masked tonight. Anonymity is part of the event. The afternoon dragged with agonizing slowness. At 4, Marcus returned from scouting the palace approaches. Security is tight, but manageable. They're checking invitations at the main entrance, but barely glancing at faces. Too many guests, too much chaos. We should be able to get in without issue. At 5, their archivist contact sent word via coded message. The path was clear, the guards scheduled as expected, the window of opportunity intact. At 6, they gathered one final time. Teams, Adrian said briskly. Marcus, Willem, Thomas, you're with me for the archives. Kellen, Rowan, Jarek, you're on the prison extraction. Marna stays at the inn as our fallback contact. And Alara comes with you to the archives, then to the ballroom, she finished, where she reveals herself and burns Casimir's world down. Exactly. He looked at each person. Timing is critical. Archives team moves at midnight, prison team at 12:30, using the distraction we create. By 1 o'clock, either we've succeeded or we're running for our lives. Questions? What if Casimir has guards waiting? Thomas asked. What if he knows we're coming? Then we improvise. Fight if we have to, run if we can't fight, but we don't surrender, and we don't leave anyone behind. Adrian's voice was iron. We walk out of this together or not at all. Understood? Understood. At 7 o'clock, they departed for the palace. The winter masquerade was already in full chaos when they arrived. The palace ballroom blazed with light, hundreds of candles in crystal chandeliers, torches lining the walls, braziers burning scented oils. Music swirled through the air, complex and wild. Masked figures danced, laughed, drank from crystal goblets while servants moved through the crowd, offering delicacies. It was beautiful, decadent, obscene. Adrian felt disgust rise in his throat. This celebration cost more than most northern villages saw in a year. While people starved under Casimir's taxes, the court feasted. Breathe, Alara murmured beside him. We're here to end this. Focus. She was right. He forced his expression into bored neutrality and guided their group through the entrance. The guards barely glanced at their invitation, forged by Marcus's contact in the city, perfect down to the royal seal. They were waved through without incident. Inside, the ballroom was packed. Nobles from across the empire, all wearing elaborate masks and costumes, anonymity and excess in equal measure, perfect for what they needed. Adrian scanned the room, cataloging exits, guard positions, potential threats. The king's personal guards stood along the walls, 6 of them, professional and alert despite the celebration. At the far end of the ballroom, on a raised dais, sat the throne, and on the throne sat King Casimir. Even masked, he was unmistakable. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a golden half-mask that did nothing to hide the cruel set of his mouth. He watched the celebration with the detached amusement of a predator watching prey dance. Beside Adrian, Ilara had gone very still. "That's him," she whispered. "The man who killed my family." "Easy." "Not yet. We need the evidence first." She nodded stiffly, but Adrian could feel the rage radiating from her like heat. They positioned themselves near the eastern wall, close to the exit they'd need for the archives. Marna had given them a basket of wine and food, props to look like they belonged. They waited. The palace bells chimed 11. 1 hour. Adrian caught Marcus's eye across the room. His lieutenant nodded imperceptibly. "Ready." The minutes crawled past. At 11:30, a commotion near the throne drew attention. A noble had apparently drunk too much and was making a scene, demanding an audience with the king. Guards moved to intervene, creating a distraction. Adrian's contact, a woman in a servant's uniform, appeared at his elbow. "Now," she whispered. "Side door, quickly." They moved. Out of the ballroom into a servant's corridor, through a maze of passages that twisted through the palace's hidden infrastructure. The archivist led them with confident precision, knowing exactly which guards would be where, which doors would be unlocked. They reached the archives without incident. The room was vast, 3 stories of shelves packed with documents, scrolls, ledgers, the accumulated records of 100 years of governance. "You have 20 minutes, the archivist said. "After that, the guard rotation changes, and this entrance won't be safe." "Where are the prisoner records?" Ilara asked. "3rd floor, northwest section, marked State Security. You'll need this." She handed Adrian a key. "It opens the locked cabinet. Don't ask how I got it." She disappeared back into the corridor. They climbed to the 3rd floor. The cabinet stood exactly where described. Heavy oak, reinforced lock. Adrian used the key. The lock clicked open. Inside, files, hundreds of them. Names, dates, charges. They started searching. Marcus found it first. A thick folder labeled Political Detainees Maximum Security. Inside, a ledger. Names in neat handwriting. And there, halfway down the 2nd page, Darius Vane. Age 9 at arrest. Charge, royal bloodline. Status, detained indefinitely. Location, Black Tower, cell 47. Proof, absolute proof that Casimir had kept a Vane heir alive and imprisoned. "Got it," Marcus said, pulling the page free. "This is enough." "No." Ilara was digging deeper into the files. "We need more. We need—" She stopped, pulled out another folder. "Here. Execution orders. Signed by Casimir. Dated before the coup. He planned the massacre 3 months in advance, ordered specific targets, even listed the children by name." Her hands were shaking as she read her own death warrant, written when she was 7 years old. "Ilara," Adrian said gently, "we have enough. We need to go." She grabbed the folder, along with several others. Evidence of disappearances, torture, systematic suppression, all in Casimir's own hand. "Now we go," she said. They made it back to the ballroom at 5 minutes past midnight. The celebration had intensified. More drinking, louder music, the masks coming off as nobles stopped pretending at decorum. Perfect chaos. Adrian spotted Kellen across the room. The archer nodded once. Message received. The prison team was moving. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. They needed the prison break to succeed before Ilara revealed herself. If Darius wasn't free, Casimir could use him as leverage. Adrian checked his pocket watch. 12:20, 12:30, 12:40. A commotion at the ballroom's north entrance. Guards rushing out. Shouts. The sound of alarm bells in the distance. Someone had discovered the prison break. "That's our cue," Adrian said. Ilara stood slowly, removed her mask, let her face show for the first time. Around her, the nearest nobles glanced over, did double takes, stared. Whispers started spreading, rippling outward through the crowd like waves. "Is that? It can't be. She's dead." Ilara walked toward the throne. The crowd parted before her, some out of shock, some out of instinct, recognizing authority even when they didn't understand it. King Casimir looked up from his conversation with a duke, saw her approaching. His expression shifted from mild interest to confusion to dawning recognition. to absolute fury. "Seize her," he shouted. "Seize that woman!" The guards moved, but Adrian and Marcus were faster. They stepped in front of Alara, weapons drawn, blocking the guard's path. "I wouldn't," Adrian said calmly. "Not until you hear what she has to say." "I know who that is," Casimir snarled, rising from his throne. "That's a pretender, an impostor. The Vane line is extinct. I saw the bodies myself." "Did you?" Alara's voice rang out across the suddenly silent ballroom. "Or did you see what you wanted to see? One burned child in a nursery, declared to be me without proper confirmation because it was convenient? Because it completed your narrative?" She pulled down her collar, revealing the 7-pointed star on her shoulder, the birthmark that couldn't be faked. The gasps were audible. Nobles recognized it instantly. The mark of Vane royalty, taught in every history lesson, impossible to replicate. "I am Alara Vane," she said clearly, "daughter of King Aldrich, rightful heir to this throne, and I have returned to expose the man who stole it." "This is treason," Casimir said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "Guards! Arrest her!" "Under what authority?" Adrian stepped forward, holding up the documents they'd stolen. "Under the authority of a king who planned a massacre 3 months before executing it? Who kept detailed records of his victims? Who imprisoned a 9-year-old child for the crime of being born royal?" He threw the documents onto the ballroom floor. They scattered across the marble. The nearest nobles picked them up, started reading. Their expressions shifted from skepticism to shock to horror. "These are lies," Casimir said. "Forgeries planted by traitors." "They're in your handwriting," a duchess interrupted, holding up one of the execution orders. "I recognize your hand. I've read enough of your correspondence to know it anywhere." "And this," a count added, holding up the prisoner ledger, "shows a Vane heir detained in the Black Tower. Darius Vane, still alive, still imprisoned, after you swore the entire family was dead." The crowd was turning. Adrian could feel it, the shift in atmosphere, the moment when doubt became certainty. "Where's the boy?" someone shouted. "Where's the prince?" As if in answer, the ballroom doors burst open. Kellen stumbled through, supporting a thin, ragged figure. Behind them, Rowan and Jarek, bloodied but alive. The figure was barely conscious, starved, beaten, but unmistakably royal. The same features as Alara, the same dark hair, the same Vane birthmark visible on his exposed arm. "Darius," Alara breathed. She ran to him, caught him as he collapsed, held him while he stared at her with disbelieving eyes. "Alara?" His voice was hoarse from disuse. You're real?" "I'm real. I'm here. We're going to fix this." The ballroom had gone absolutely silent. Every eye was on the 2 Vane heirs, reunited after a decade of separation and suffering. Casimir's face had gone white. "This proves nothing. They could be anyone. Actors, traitors, plants. They bear the royal mark," the Duchess said coldly. "Both of them. And we have your signed orders for their family's execution. And a prisoner ledger showing you've kept the boy locked in a cell for 10 years while claiming him dead." She turned to the assembled nobles. "I think we've seen enough proof." Murmurs of agreement, growing louder, angrier. The palace guards were looking at each other uncertainly, some still loyal to Casimir, others remembering older oaths, to the crown, to the Vane line. Alara stood slowly, helping Darius to his feet. She looked around at the assembled nobility, the power brokers of the empire, the people who kept Casimir in power through their complicity or silence. 10 years ago," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room, "my family was slaughtered, my parents murdered, my brothers taken. I survived by hiding, by pretending to be broken, by making myself so worthless that no one would look at me twice." She pulled up her sleeve, showing scars, old burns, whip marks, the evidence of a decade of survival. "I was sold in a slave auction for 5 copper coins, the lowest price in recorded history. The crowd laughed at how worthless I was, how damaged, how pathetic." Her voice was steel now. "But I survived. I learned. I waited. And I found allies brave enough to help me bring the truth to light." She gestured to Adrian and his team. "These people risked everything. Not for glory, Not for power, but because they believed justice mattered more than survival. Because they understood that tyranny unchallenged becomes permanent. She turned back to Casimir. You took everything from me. My family. My childhood. My identity. You forced me to hide like an animal for 10 years. To erase myself. To become nothing. She stepped forward. But I am not nothing. I am Alara Vane, and I am done hiding. The palace guards were moving now, but not toward Alara, toward Casimir. Their captain, an older man with a scarred face, stepped forward. Sire, I served your predecessor. Swore oaths to the Vane line. Those oaths don't expire just because you declared them dead. He drew his sword, not threatening, just ready. I think it's time for some answers. Casimir looked around wildly, seeing his support crumbling, seeing the nobles turning against him, seeing the guards who'd kept him in power now questioning their loyalty. You'll all hang for this, he hissed. This is treason, rebellion. I am the legitimate king. You're a murderer, Alara said quietly, and your reign is over. Casimir lunged, not at Alara, at the nearest guard trying to grab his sword, desperate to fight his way out. But Adrian was faster. His blade took Casimir in the shoulder, not lethal, not merciful, just enough to drop him to his knees, weapon clattering across the floor. The former king knelt there, bleeding, while the entire court watched. Take him, the guard captain ordered. To the cells. Let him experience what he inflicted on the Vane prince. Guards moved forward. Casimir fought, screaming threats and curses, but they hauled him away nonetheless. The ballroom remained silent. Then, slowly, one of the nobles knelt, an elderly count who'd served under the old regime. Your Majesty, he said to Alara. Others followed. One by one, the assembled nobility knelt, some out of genuine respect, some out of political expediency, but all of them acknowledging the shift in power. Alara stood frozen, staring at the sea of kneeling figures. I don't want this, she whispered to Adrian. I told you, I don't want the crown. I know, but right now they need to see a leader, someone legitimate, someone who can restore order. He stepped back. You can abdicate later. First, we stabilize the empire. Then you make your choice. She took a shaking breath, then squared her shoulders. Rise, she said. All of you. I'm not your queen yet. I'm a survivor who just exposed a tyrant. The rest, the governance, the rebuilding, the justice, that comes after. When we've had time to think, to plan, to do this right. She looked around at the assembled power of the empire. You kept a murderer in power for 10 years. Through action or inaction, you enabled his reign. So don't kneel now looking for absolution. Earn it. Help rebuild what was broken. Help find the others he victimized. Help create something better than what we had. The Duchess who'd first spoken in Alara's defense stood. What would you have us do, Your Highness? Don't call me that. Not yet. Alara's voice was firm. Call me Alara, and help me figure out how to fix an empire, because I have no idea how to do this alone. A ripple of surprised laughter. Human, real, breaking the tension. The Duchess smiled. Then we'll help, and Alara, welcome home. The next hours were chaos. Casimir was imprisoned, his closest supporters arrested or fled. The palace guard swore new oaths to Alara, though she kept insisting she wasn't officially anything yet. Darius was taken to the palace physicians, who worked frantically to address 10 years of neglect and abuse. Corwin, who'd arrived with the team, supervised with the fierce protectiveness of someone who delivered that prince as a baby. Adrian watched it all from the edges, his role complete. He'd brought the evidence, protected the heir, exposed the tyrant. Now came the harder part, the rebuilding, the governance, the work of actually making things better. Alara found him near dawn, standing on a balcony overlooking the city. You're leaving, she said. Statement, not question. Soon. Not immediately, but yes. The North is my home, and you don't need a soldier anymore. You need diplomats, advisors, people who understand politics. I need friends, people I can trust, people who've proven they care more about justice than power. She stepped beside him. Stay. Help me build this. You said yourself you wanted to fight for something you believed in. This is it. This is the cause. Adrian shook his head slowly. I'm a warrior. I break things. You need people who can build. And besides, he smiled slightly, you were right about the crown. It should be a choice, your choice, and my presence here would pressure you. The Duke who helped you reclaim the throne. Everyone would expect you to reward me, to give me power, and that would corrupt the very thing we're trying to create. So you're walking away? After everything? I'm giving you space to decide without influence, to choose whether you want to be queen or abdicate without owing anyone anything. He turned to face her. You survived 10 years by being smart, strategic. Don't lose that now. Take time, think, build a council of people who'll tell you the truth, and then make whatever choice feels right. Alara's eyes glistened. I don't know how to do this without you. Yes, you do. You jumped off a tower and survived. You walked into a ballroom full of enemies and exposed a king. You're the strongest person I've ever met. He gripped her shoulder. You don't need me. You never did. You just needed someone to believe in you first. Now the whole empire believes, so prove them right. She pulled him into a hug, fierce and brief. Thank you. For the slave auction, for the library tests, for seeing past the act, for giving me a chance. You gave yourself the chance. I just didn't get in your way. When she pulled back, she was smiling through tears. If I do take the crown, if I decide to try being queen, will you come back? Advise me. Keep me honest? If you need me. But I suspect you'll find better advisors, people who actually know what they're doing. None of them will have jumped into freezing water to save me. Fair point. They stood together watching the sunrise, the city waking up to a new reality, a new chance. 3 days later, Adrian prepared to leave. Darius was recovering. Still weak, still processing a decade of captivity, but alive and aware and beginning to smile when Alara visited. They were relearning each other, brother and sister reunited after believing each other dead. The nobles had formed a provisional council to handle governance while Alara decided about the throne. Some were opportunists, others genuine. But the Duchess was keeping them in line, and the threat of public exposure kept the worst corruption at bay. Casimir awaited trial. Eventually, he'd face justice. For now, he sat in a cell and thought about what he'd done. Adrian's team was being honored. Willem had been offered a position in the palace guard. Thomas was considering it. Kellen had declined, saying he'd had enough of courts and politics. Roan and Jarek were heading home to their families, finally believing the empire might be worth fighting for. Marna was staying. Someone needed to cook for the royal siblings, she'd declared, and she'd be damned if she let palace chefs poison them with their fancy nonsense. Marcus stood with Adrian in the palace courtyard, checking saddles and supplies for the journey north. You sure about this? The lieutenant asked. Leaving while it's still unstable? We could stay. Make sure she's safe. She's surrounded by guards, advisors, and an entire empire that's finally paying attention. She's safer than she's been in a decade. Adrian mounted Fenrir carefully, his knees still protesting, but functional. And we're not soldiers anymore. We're just men who did what needed doing. Time to go home. Home to what? An empty fortress and winter storms? Home to peace? Quiet. The knowledge that we actually won something that mattered. Marcus smiled. Never thought I'd see the day. Adrian Blackmore, optimist. Don't get used to it. Alara appeared at the courtyard entrance, dressed in practical riding clothes instead of royal finery. She'd been avoiding the crown literally and figuratively, refusing to wear anything too formal until she decided what she actually wanted. You're really leaving, she said. Really leaving. But I'll visit. Check on you. Make sure you haven't accidentally started a civil war. Give me some credit. I'll start any civil wars very deliberately. She stepped forward, handing him a sealed letter. For when you get home. Don't open it until you're there. What is it? A reminder and a promise. Read it when you're alone. Adrian tucked it into his saddlebag. Take care of yourself and your brother, and this empire you're apparently saving. I'll try, though I'm still not convinced I'm keeping the crown. Then don't. Build a republic, establish a council, find some other poor fool to be monarch. Just make sure whoever leads understands what you learned, that power is responsibility, not privilege. I will, she smiled. Go home, Duke Blackmore. You've earned your rest. He rode out through the palace gates with Marcus beside him, leaving the capital behind. The journey north took 2 weeks. When Ravenscar finally appeared on the horizon, Adrian felt something in his chest loosen. Home. Real home. Not the palace with its politics and intrigue, just stone and sea and the harsh beauty of the north. That night, alone in his study, he opened Alara's letter. Inside, 2 items. First, a royal decree, signed by the Provisional Council and sealed with the Vane crest. It granted Adrian permanent ownership of Ravenscar and the surrounding lands, free from all taxes and obligations in recognition of his service to the realm. He'd never have to answer to a corrupt king again. Second, a handwritten note in Alara's precise script. Adrian, you told me I should choose freely, so I'm choosing this to take the crown. Not because I want it, but because I understand it now. Leadership isn't about deserving power. It's about being willing to carry the weight so others don't have to. I'm going to be queen, and I'm going to be a good one. Not perfect. I'm too damaged for that. But honest, fair, and absolutely committed to making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. Thank you for teaching me that survival isn't enough, that sometimes you have to step forward and fight, even when you're terrified, even when the odds are impossible. You bought a servant for 5 copper coins. You got a queen. Not a bad investment. Your friend, Alara Vane. Queen of Astorvale, apparently. Adrian set the letter down and stared out at the sea. He'd ridden south expecting to die fighting tyranny. Instead, he'd helped crown a queen and lived to see it. Not bad for a guilt-haunted duke with a ruined knee and a fortress full of ghosts. Months later, word reached Ravenscar that Queen Alara had been formally crowned. The ceremony was simple by royal standards. No excessive pageantry, just the crown, the oath, and a speech where she promised to serve rather than rule. She kept that promise. The political prisoners were released, the corrupt nobles were removed. Casimir was tried and executed for his crimes. The empire began, slowly and imperfectly, to heal. And in the north, Duke Adrian Blackmore sat in his library surrounded by maps and books, occasionally receiving letters from a queen who still asked his advice on military strategy and ethical governance. He never returned to court, never sought power or recognition. But sometimes, late at night, when the northern wind howled against the walls, he would think about a soot-covered girl who'd been sold for 5 copper coins. The girl everyone had laughed at, the servant no one wanted, the broken thing the world had discarded. That girl was queen now, and the empire was better for it. Adrian smiled and turned back to his books, content in the knowledge that some impossible things actually came true, that sometimes the worthless became priceless, that sometimes justice won, and that the best investment he'd ever made hadn't been land or gold or political favor. It had been 5 copper coins and a willingness to see past the act, to recognize strength hidden beneath survival, to give one broken girl a chance to become whole. The rest, as they say, was history.